A janitor walks past the CEO who destroyed his life, and she has no idea he holds the proof that could bring down her entire empire. Ryan Cole scrubs floors in the same building where he once wore suits. Olivia Grant runs billion-dollar deals from the penthouse. 7 years ago, she signed the paper that ended his career for a crime he didn't commit. Now, the same fraud is happening again, and only he knows the truth. This is a story about invisible people, buried mistakes, and the moment when silence finally breaks. If you want to see how far truth can travel, drop a comment with your city below and hit that like button. Let's see where this story reaches. The alarm went off at 3:47 a.m., same as always. Ryan Cole didn't hit snooze. He never did. His hand moved to silence it before the second beep, muscle memory from years of not wanting to wake Emma. The apartment was dark except for the streetlight bleeding through cheap blinds, painting everything in shades of gray and amber. He sat up slowly, feeling the pull in his lower back, the kind that came from pushing a commercial buffer for 6 hours straight. 32 years old, and already his body kept a record of every shift, every corridor, every square foot of marble he'd restored to its corporate shine. The bathroom mirror showed a face he'd stopped examining too closely. Stubble he'd shave in another hour. Eyes that looked older than they should. He splashed water, brushed his teeth, moved through the routine with the efficiency of someone who'd learned not to waste time on things that didn't matter. Emma's door was cracked open. He paused there, listening to her breathe, soft, even, the sound of a kid who still believed the world was fundamentally safe. She'd kicked off her blanket again. He stepped in quietly, pulled it back over her small shoulders, tucked her stuffed rabbit closer. 7 years old, second grade. Her teacher said she was reading at a 4th grade level. That was the win. That was everything. He left a note on the kitchen counter, made your lunch, carrot sticks, and the ranch you like. Home by 4. Love you, bug. And checked the contents of her backpack one more time. Homework folder, library book, the purple pencil case she'd picked out herself. By 4:15 a.m., he was in his Toyota, the engine turning over with a rattling cough that meant he'd need to check the belts again soon. The streets were empty, that dead hour when the city belonged to delivery trucks and people whose lives didn't fit daylight hours. Ryan drove in silence. No radio, no podcasts. Just the hum of tires on asphalt and his own thoughts, which he'd learned to keep in their designated boxes. Work. Emma. Bills. Repeat. The glass tower of Hartwell Global came into view at 4:28 a.m., lit from within like some monument to money and ambition. 23 floors of steel and reflective windows, the kind of building that made architecture magazines and inspired stockholder confidence. He'd walked through the front entrance once, years ago. Different clothes, different posture, different life. Now he used the service entrance on the east side, swiping his badge through the reader that unlocked the freight elevator. The mechanism chunked into motion, carrying him up to the second-floor supply closet where his cart waited. Marcus was already there, headphones in, nodding to whatever beat was keeping him awake. He was 61, had worked maintenance at Hartwell for 19 years, and had exactly zero interest in anyone's bullshit. "Early," Marcus said, pulling one earbud out. "Same time as yesterday." "Yesterday you were late." "Yesterday I was on time." "You were early." Marcus grinned, showing the gap in his molars he refused to fix. "World's going to hell, and we're arguing about 4 minutes." Ryan loaded his cart. Cleaning solutions, microfiber cloths, the buffer that weighed 48 pounds and had a temperamental motor. "Executive floors?" "Yeah, conference room's yours. They had some presentation yesterday, left it looking like a frat party." "Great. Hey, at least they tip at Christmas." "They tip you at Christmas. I'm still new." 2 years ain't new, brother. You're just forgettable." Marcus said it without malice, just stating fact. "That's the job. We're furniture that moves." Ryan didn't disagree. He'd learned the particular invisibility of service work, how people looked past you, even when you were standing right there, how conversations continued as if you were deaf or didn't speak English, how easy it was to become part of the architecture. Sometimes that was a mercy. He pushed his cart toward the elevator, heading for the 17th floor where the executive conference rooms lived. The building was still quiet, just the hum of HVAC systems and the occasional flicker of fluorescent lights that needed replacing. The conference room was exactly as advertised, coffee cups abandoned, pastry crumbs ground into the carpet, dry erase markers left uncapped on the table. A projector still hummed, displaying a frozen PowerPoint slide, Q4 projections, confidential. Ryan clicked it off, started with the trash. This was the part where his brain went quiet, where the work became meditation. Wipe down surfaces, vacuum in straight lines, check the windows for fingerprints, restore order to chaos, leave no trace that he'd been there except cleanliness itself. He was buffing the marble in the corridor outside when he heard the elevator. 4:47 a.m. Too early for anyone executive level. Probably building security making rounds, or maybe someone from IT pulling an all-nighter. The doors opened. Olivia Grant stepped out, phone pressed to her ear, heels clicking against the floor he'd just finished. Ryan's hands didn't stop moving. Muscle memory kept the buffer in motion, kept his eyes on the stone, kept his breathing steady. "Don't care what Bennett says, the numbers don't support his timeline," Olivia was saying. Her voice had that particular crispness of someone used to being obeyed. "Push the meeting to Friday. I want the full audit ready before we commit to anything." She walked past him without a glance. Same as always. Ryan had seen her maybe a dozen times in 2 years, brief passings in corridors, once in the lobby when she was dealing with a courier, another time when her car had blocked the service entrance and Marcus had to call up to get it moved. She never looked at the maintenance staff. Why would she? He watched her reflection in the polished marble, distorted slightly by the stone's natural veining, tailored suit, hair pulled back sharp enough to hurt, the kind of posture that came from never doubting you belonged exactly where you were. 30 years old and running a company worth $3 billion. She'd been 23 when she fired him. The buffer's motor whined as he pushed it back toward the supply closet. His shift didn't end until noon, but the executive floors were done. He'd move down to the 12th floor, handle the law offices, then swing back to the lobby before the morning rush hit. Routine, pattern, invisibility. His phone buzzed at 6:30 a.m. Emma's wake-up time. Got the note. "Can we have pizza tonight?" He smiled despite himself. "We had pizza Tuesday, but that was days ago, Dad." "That was 2 days ago." "Exactly. Days, plural. Therefore we need pizza." "Nice try." "How about spaghetti?" "With the cheese you grate? Is there another kind?" "Store-bought cheese is sad cheese, spaghetti with happy cheese." "Deal, deal." "Love you." "Love you too, Bug. Crush today." He pocketed the phone and grabbed the vacuum. The 12th floor was quieter, mostly junior partners and analysts who wouldn't arrive until 8. He moved through offices in systematic rows, collecting forgotten coffee cups and straightening chairs. In one office, someone had left their computer unlocked, email open. Ryan glanced away automatically. Not his business, not his life, not his problem. But something snagged his attention. A name in the subject line. R.E. Quarterly Reconciliation. Urgent. He shouldn't look. He knew better, but his eyes caught the preview text before he could stop them. Discrepancies in departmental transfers. Third quarter showing unusual patterns. Recommend immediate review before board presentation. His chest tightened. He knew those words. He'd written reports with those exact phrases 7 years ago when he'd been senior financial analyst and his biggest problem was whether to lease or buy a new car. Ryan finished vacuuming, left the office exactly as he'd found it, and pushed his cart to the next room. But the tightness didn't leave. By 9 a.m., the building had transformed. Elevators hummed constantly. Voices echoed in stairwells, the lobby flooded with people in business casual carrying coffee cups branded with logos that cost more than his monthly grocery budget. Ryan became furniture again. He moved through the chaos, emptying trash bins in the executive wing, wiping down the break room counters, replacing paper towels in the 14th floor bathrooms. He was in the service corridor when he heard them. 2 voices, urgent and low. "Can't keep moving the review date. The auditors are already asking questions. Bennett's handling it. Just give him until Friday. Friday's too late. If someone actually looks at the departmental breakdowns, no one's looking that close. They never do." Ryan kept walking, cartwheels squeaking slightly. Not his conversation, not his company, not anymore. But that night, after Emma was asleep, after the spaghetti and the grated cheese and the bedtime story about a dragon who learned to share, Ryan sat in his kitchen with his laptop and did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He searched for Hartwell Global's financial statements. Public information. Quarterly reports filed with the SEC. Nothing illegal about reading what any investor could access. The numbers were clean on the surface. Revenue trending up, margins stable, all the indicators that made analysts happy. But Ryan had spent 5 years learning to read between lines. He opened a spreadsheet, old habit, old tool, and started pulling data. Revenue by department, operational costs, transfer patterns between divisions. At 11:47 p.m., he found it. Departmental transfers that didn't match reported expenses. Money moving in patterns that made no operational sense. Small amounts, carefully distributed. The kind of thing that wouldn't trigger automated flags but would add up to millions over a fiscal year. The same scheme. The exact same methodology he'd uncovered 7 years ago. And just like before, the trail led up, way up, to executive level. Ryan closed the laptop and sat in the dark. He should delete the spreadsheet. Forget what he'd seen. His life was good enough now. Stable job, healthy kid, no drama. Why would he stick his hand back into the machinery that had already crushed him once? But somewhere in the building tomorrow, people would walk past these numbers. They'd approve budgets, sign contracts, make decisions based on fraudulent data. And when it finally collapsed, and it would collapse, they always did, regular people would lose their jobs. People like Marcus, like the woman who worked the front desk, like the single parents who cleaned offices at 4 a.m., because that was the shift that paid enough. Emma's face flashed through his mind. Are you happy, Dad? He was. He really was. But happiness built on looking away wasn't the kind he wanted her to learn. Ryan opened the laptop again and started documenting everything. The next morning started the same. Alarm at 3:47. Emma still sleeping. Note on the counter. But when Ryan walked into Hartwell Global at 4:28 a.m., something had shifted in his chest. He did his job. Cleaned the conference room, buffed the marble, emptied the trash. But now he paid attention differently. Not to be nosy, but to understand. Which offices stayed lit past midnight? Which departments had unusual foot traffic? Who met with whom in corners they thought were private? Patterns emerged. The CFO's office, corner suite, 18th floor, had late-night meetings 3 times a week. The same 4 people, including someone Ryan recognized from Treasury and another from accounts receivable. The kind of cross-departmental meetings that either meant legitimate business coordination or something much worse. Ryan started keeping notes. Not on his work phone, he wasn't stupid, but in a physical notebook he kept in his car. Times, dates, observations. Nothing accusatory, just facts. On Thursday, he was cleaning the 18th floor break room when the CFO walked past, talking to someone Ryan didn't recognize. The Grant girl doesn't look at operational details. She's all strategy and vision. As long as the summary numbers work, we're fine. They turned the corner, voices fading. The Grant girl. Olivia. Ryan's jaw tightened. He'd spent 7 years angry at her. The CEO who'd signed off on his firing without question, who'd accepted the narrative that he was a thief, who'd never once asked for his side. But maybe she hadn't known. Maybe she'd been used, same as him. Or maybe she'd known exactly what she was doing and hadn't cared as long as the company's reputation stayed clean. He didn't know which possibility made him angrier. Friday afternoon, Ryan left work at noon and picked Emma up early from school. Special occasion? She asked, climbing into the car with her backpack dragging. Felt like it? Want to get ice cream? Always want ice cream. Are you okay? He glanced at her. Too smart, too perceptive, too much like her mother had been. Why wouldn't I be? You've got that face. What face? The one where you're thinking about grown-up stuff and pretending you're not. Ryan pulled into traffic. I'm fine, Bug. Promise.
But said sweets.
They got ice cream. Chocolate chip for her, coffee for him, and sat in the park watching joggers and dog walkers and people whose biggest Friday concern was probably what to watch on Netflix. Dad? Yeah? If you knew something bad was happening, would you tell someone? His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. What kind of bad? Like, I don't know, if you saw someone cheating on a test or being mean when teachers weren't looking. That's different than grown-up problems, Em. But same question. Would you tell? He thought about it.
Really thought, because she deserved real answers. Depends. Would telling make things better or just make things messier? What if you didn't know which it would do? Then I'd probably ask myself, can I live with staying quiet? Emma nodded slowly, working through some 7-year-old dilemma he'd never hear the full details of.
What if the person who did the bad thing was someone important? Important people aren't more important than doing what's right. She seemed satisfied with that, went back to her ice cream. Ryan wished he felt as certain as he'd sounded. That night, after Emma was asleep, he opened his laptop and stared at the spreadsheet he'd been building. 7 years ago, he'd brought evidence to his supervisor. He'd written a detailed report, shown the patterns, explained how the fraud worked. And 48 hours later, he'd been fired for the exact thing he'd tried to expose. They'd been smart about it, falsified records with his digital signature, fabricated an email trail, created a narrative so airtight that even Ryan's lawyer had said fighting it would cost more than he'd ever recover. So he'd signed the severance agreement, taken the NDA money, and disappeared. Because Emma had been 6 months old and her mother had just left, and he didn't have the luxury of fighting battles he couldn't win. But this time was different. This time he wasn't inside the system. He had no access to falsify, no credentials to compromise. He was invisible, which meant he was also untouchable. And this time, he had nothing left to lose. Ryan pulled up a blank document and started writing. Not a report, not an accusation, just facts, numbers, patterns, dates and amounts, and transfer codes. The kind of information that someone who actually wanted to look would find devastating. And someone who didn't want to look could easily ignore. The question was, which kind of person was Olivia Grant? Monday morning, 4:30 a.m., Ryan walked past Olivia in the 17th floor corridor. She was on her phone again, dealing with something urgent enough to drag her in before sunrise. She didn't look at him. But this time Ryan stopped his buffer and called out, "Ms. Grant?" She turned, startled. Probably couldn't remember the last time someone from maintenance had addressed her directly. "Yes?" Up close, she looked tired. Not just early morning tired, but the kind that lived behind the eyes. The kind that expensive concealer couldn't quite hide. "The conference room's ready," Ryan said. Neutral, professional. "Wanted to make sure before your meeting." Olivia blinked. There's no meeting scheduled until 8. "Right, just making sure." He went back to his buffer, dismissed, invisible again. But he'd seen her face, the brief confusion, the flicker of something that might have been curiosity or might have been nothing, seeds planted. Tuesday. He did it again. Different floor, different excuse. "Coffee machine in the executive lounge is making a weird sound. Thought you should know before it breaks during a client meeting." Olivia looked at him with slightly more focus this time. "Thank you. I'll have someone check it." "Sure thing." Wednesday. He left a cleaning cart blocking the elevator she used every morning at 4:45. When she came around the corner and found it there, Ryan was apologizing before she could speak. "Sorry, Ms. Grant. Motor died. I'm waiting for Marcus to help me move it." "It's fine." But she was looking at him now, really looking. Do I know you?" Ryan's heart hammered against his ribs. "Don't think so. I'm just maintenance." "No, I mean—" She stopped, shook her head. "Never mind." Long morning. She took the stairs instead. Ryan watched her go, wondering if she'd actually recognize something, or if it was just the paranoia that came with doing the same guilty thing twice. By Thursday, Olivia started arriving earlier. 4:15 instead of 4:30. Ryan adjusted his schedule, got there at 4 o'clock. She noticed. "You're here early," she said Friday morning, finding him already working on the 18th floor. "Same time as always." "No, you've been getting earlier all week." Ryan straightened, met her eyes. "Needed to finish before the executive teams arrive. Easier when it's quiet." "Right." She didn't leave, just stood there, holding her coffee cup, looking at him like he was a puzzle with missing pieces. "What's your name?" "Ryan." "Ryan?" "Cole." The name hung in the air between them. He watched her face, looking for recognition. For the moment it would click, but she just nodded. "Well, Ryan Cole, I appreciate the thoroughness. Building looks good." She walked away. And Ryan realized she genuinely didn't remember him. 7 years ago, she'd signed the paper that ended his career, destroyed his reputation, and derailed his entire life. And she didn't even remember his name. The anger he'd been keeping in its designated box cracked open. Not explosive, not dramatic, just cold and clear and absolutely certain. He went home that afternoon and finished the document he'd been building. 23 pages of financial analysis, pattern documentation, and evidence that Hartwell Global had been running the same fraudulent scheme for at least 7 years. And at the bottom, he added one more thing. The person who uncovered this pattern in 2018 was fired for fraud he didn't commit. His name was Ryan Cole. The scheme continued because the real perpetrator was never identified or removed. It's still happening. The question is, will anyone actually look this time? He printed one copy, sealed it in an envelope, and wrote on the front, "For Olivia Grant, personal and confidential." Monday morning, he left it on her desk, and then he waited. Ryan didn't see Olivia for 3 days. He did his job, kept his head down, watched the executive floors from a distance. On Wednesday, her office stayed lit until 2 a.m. Ryan was long gone by then, but Marcus mentioned it the next morning. "CEO's been burning midnight oil," he said, refilling the supply cart. "Saw her car in the garage when I left at 11. Whatever's going on up there, it's got them rattled." Thursday morning, 4:45 a.m. Ryan was buffing the 17th floor corridor when Olivia's office door opened. She stepped out, looking like she'd been awake for 72 hours straight. "Ryan Cole." He shut off the buffer. "Come with me." Not a request. An order. Ryan followed her to the conference room he'd cleaned 100 times. She closed the door, pulled the blinds, and turned to face him. "How long have you known?" "About the fraud? 2 weeks since I started documenting it." "No?" Her voice was sharp. "How long have you been working here in this building?" 2 years. "Under your real name?" "Never stopped being my real name." Olivia's jaw worked. "You were fired in 2018 for embezzlement." "I was accused of embezzlement. Big difference." "You signed an NDA." "About my severance. Not about working here. I applied to a staffing company. They hired me for maintenance. I showed up and did my job. Nothing in my NDA said I couldn't scrub toilets in the same building where I used to write financial reports." She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Why would you come back here?" "Didn't have a lot of options. Turns out getting fired for fraud doesn't look great on a resume. Maintenance companies don't run the same background checks as finance firms. And you just cleaned floors for 2 years? Watching? Waiting? I cleaned floors because it paid my rent and let me pick up my daughter from school. I wasn't waiting for anything." "Then why the document?" She gestured toward her office. "Why now?" Ryan pulled out a chair and sat, uninvited, but he was done standing while people in suits decided his life. "Because I saw the numbers, same patterns, same methodology, same fraud, and I realized the person who did it 7 years ago is still here, still operating, still stealing. You think I knew?" It wasn't a question. "Did you?" "No." The word came out hard. "I was 23 years old and CFO Wallace told me we had an analyst stealing from departmental accounts. He showed me fabricated evidence. I believed him. I signed the termination." "Without asking me?" "Without knowing I needed to ask you." Ryan laughed, short, bitter. "That makes it better?" "No, it doesn't." Olivia sat down across from him, and for the first time since he'd known her, both versions of her, she looked unsure. "I was young and stupid, and I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I destroyed your life because I didn't ask the right questions. And now? Now I've spent 3 days verifying every number in your document. I brought in an outside forensic accountant I trust. We've been tearing apart 7 years of financial records." "And?" Olivia's hands were shaking slightly. She pressed them flat against the table. "You were right, all of it. Wallace has been running a systemic embezzlement operation, moving money through departmental transfers and offshore accounts. Millions, maybe more." The room went quiet. Ryan had known. Intellectually, he'd known. But hearing it confirmed still hit like a punch to the chest. "What now?" he asked. "Now I fire him, call the SEC, start legal proceedings, and watch this company I've spent 7 years building take a credibility hit it might not survive." Not my problem. No. Olivia met his eyes. But I'm making you an offer anyway. I don't want my old job back. I'm not offering your old job. I'm offering you Director of Financial Oversight. New position, reports directly to me. Your job would be making sure this never happens again. Ryan stood up. You think I want to work for you? I think you want to make sure no one else gets erased the way you did. I have a daughter. I have a life. I don't need to prove anything to this company. I'm not asking you to prove anything. I'm asking you to help me fix what I broke. You didn't break it. Wallace did. I signed the paper, Ryan. I ended your career without due diligence. That's on me. He walked to the window, looking out at the city waking up, delivery trucks, early commuters, the infrastructure of normal people living normal lives. I need time, he said finally. Take it, but the offer stands. Ryan turned back. Why do you care? You could bury this. Pay Wallace off. Make him disappear. Keep the fraud quiet. Happens all the time. Because I'm tired, Olivia said quietly. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent 7 years trying to be perfect, trying to prove I deserved this position, trying to be harder and smarter and better than everyone who said I only got here because of my name. Did you? Partly. My father built this company. I inherited it. But I've also worked 90-hour weeks since I was 23 trying to earn what I was given. She stood. And I'm done pretending that means I never made mistakes. Ryan studied her, really looked at the person behind the title. She looked exhausted, human, nothing like the untouchable figure he'd been carrying in his head for 7 years. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking. He left the conference room, grabbed his buffer, and finished his shift. But something had shifted. The anger was still there, probably always would be, but it had company now. Possibility. That weekend, Ryan took Emma to the aquarium. They stood in front of the jellyfish tank, watching the creature's pulse and drift, and she asked the question he'd been expecting. You seem different. Different how? Less sad quiet, more thinking quiet. Smart kid, too smart. Something happened at work, Ryan said carefully. Someone offered me a different job. A better one. Would you have to work more? Probably. Different hours, though. I'd still be home after school. Emma pressed her hand against the glass, and a jellyfish drifted close like it was investigating. Do you want the job? I don't know yet. Is it the right thing? That's the question, Bug. She looked up at him, serious. You told me important people aren't more important than doing what's right. I did say that. So do the right thing, even if it's hard. Ryan pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. When did you get so wise? Born this way, Dad? You're just catching up. Monday morning, Ryan walked into Olivia's office at 5 a.m. She was already there, surrounded by documents and coffee cups. I'll take the job, he said, on 3 conditions. Olivia looked up. I'm listening. 1. I pick my own team, people I trust, not whoever HR thinks looks good. Done. 2. My daughter comes first, always. I don't care what crisis is happening. If she needs me, I'm gone. Agreed. With 3. When this goes public and the board asks questions, you tell them the truth. All of it, including what happened to me 7 years ago. Olivia stood, walked around her desk, and offered her hand. You have my word. Ryan shook it, and for the first time in 7 years, he felt like he was standing on solid ground. When do I start? He asked. How about now? We've got a CFO to fire and a company to save. Ryan smiled, small, real, the first one he'd given her. Let's get to work. The sun was rising over the city, painting the glass tower in shades of gold and amber, and somewhere in a small apartment across town, a 7-year-old girl was waking up to a note that said, Bug, big day at work, so proud of you for being brave, love you more than all the jellyfish in the ocean. Dad. The story wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like it might have a good ending. The first thing Ryan did was move his daughter. Not physically. Emma stayed in the same school, same apartment, same routine that kept her world stable. But he moved her out of the line of fire in every other way that mattered. He sat her down that Monday night, after the spaghetti and before the homework, and told her the simplified version. Remember how I said someone offered me a different job? Emma looked up from her math worksheet. The right thing one? Yeah, I took it, but it means some things are going to change for a little while. Like what? Like there might be news stories about the company where I work. People might say things that sound scary but aren't about us, and if anyone, teachers, other parents, anyone, asks you questions about me or my work, you tell them it's private and come tell me right away. Her pencil stopped moving. Are we in trouble? No, Bug. We're fine. I'm just making sure we stay that way. Is someone else in trouble? Too smart. Always too smart. Some people at my work did bad things with money. I'm helping fix it. That's all you need to know. Emma studied his face with that unnerving 7-year-old intensity. Okay, but if it gets scary, you'll tell me? If it gets scary, we'll handle it together. Deal? Deal. She went back to her homework like he'd just told her they were out of milk. Ryan wished he felt that calm. The second thing he did was call his lawyer. Diane Chen had handled his severance negotiations 7 years ago, back when he could barely afford her hourly rate. She'd been straightforward then, told him fighting Hartwell would cost more than he'd ever recover, advised him to take the settlement and rebuild. He hadn't spoken to her since. Ryan Cole, she said when she answered, voice carrying that particular mix of surprise and wariness. Didn't expect to hear from you. Need your advice. You got an hour? For you? I've got 30 minutes. Make them count. He laid it out, the fraud, the evidence, Olivia's offer, the fact that he was about to walk back into the building that had destroyed him and try to dismantle the man who'd orchestrated it all. Diane was quiet for a long moment. You sure about this? No. Good. Uncertainty means you're thinking, what do you need from me? Legal protection. If this goes sideways, I need to make sure Emma's covered, and I need to know what Wallace can do to me. He can't do anything to you legally. You signed an NDA about your severance terms, not about criminal activity. If you're exposing fraud, that's protected whistleblower territory. And if he tries to come after me anyway? Then he's stupider than he is crooked, and we bury him. But Ryan, her voice shifted, got serious. If you're doing this for revenge, walk away now. It'll eat you alive. I'm doing it because it's happening again. Because next time it collapses, people like me lose everything while people like Wallace walk away clean. That's a better reason. Still a dangerous one. I know. Okay, send me the details. I'll draw up protection documents. And Ryan, watch your back. People who steal millions don't stop just because they get caught. He hung up and stared at his phone. Diane was right. This wasn't about revenge, but it wasn't not about revenge either. Tuesday morning, Ryan walked into Hartwell Global through the front entrance. Not the service door, not the freight elevator. The main lobby, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, glass elevator banks rising like transparent veins through the building's core. Security recognized him for maintenance, looked confused when he headed for the executive elevators instead of the service corridor. Wrong floor, man, the guard called out. Ryan turned back, showed his new security badge. Not anymore. The guy's eyebrows went up, but he nodded and waved him through. The executive floor was different at 8 a.m. than it was at 4:30. Full of people, voices, the hum of a company in motion. Assistants at desks, analysts carrying reports, the particular energy of ambitious people trying to outwork each other. Ryan felt every eye track him as he walked to Olivia's office. Her assistant, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s named Patricia, stood up as he approached. Mr. Cole, Ms. Grant is expecting you. She gestured toward the door, but her expression said she had questions she was too professional to ask. Inside, Olivia was on a call, gesturing for him to sit. I understand the optics, David, but we're not delaying the audit. Friday, non-negotiable. She hung up without saying goodbye and turned to Ryan. How much do you know about corporate investigations? Nothing. Good, you'll learn fast. She pulled out a file, slid it across the desk. These are the people we trust. Elena Martinez, forensic accountant. James Wong, corporate attorney. Sarah Hassan, data analyst. They're clean, they're discreet, and they're expecting you at 9. Ryan opened the file, scanned the names. What about the board? The board doesn't know yet. They will Friday, when we present the full audit findings. Wallace is on the board, which is why we're not giving him warning. Olivia stood, grabbed her jacket. Come on, I'll introduce you to the team. They took the elevator down to the 15th floor, to a conference room that had been cleared and sealed. Inside, 3 people looked up as they entered. Elena Martinez was mid-50s, gray hair cut short, the kind of face that had seen every financial trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. James Wong was younger, maybe 35, carrying himself with the coiled energy of someone who litigated for sport. Sarah Hassan couldn't have been more than 28, already surrounded by 3 laptops and enough cables to run a small server farm. Everyone, this is Ryan Cole, Olivia said. He's the one who uncovered the current operation and has historical context on how it started. Elena stood, offered her hand. The janitor? Former analyst, Ryan corrected. Janitor was just the career pivot. She smiled, sharp, approving. I read your document. Solid work. You missed some of the offshore components, but that's what I'm here for. James just nodded, already back to reading something on his tablet. Sarah gave him a quick wave. Love the spreadsheet architecture. Very old school, but clean. Ryan wasn't sure if that was a compliment. Okay, Olivia said, moving to the head of the table. Status update. Elena? Wallace has been running this for at least 9 years, possibly longer. The operation is sophisticated, uses legitimate departmental transfers as cover, routes money through 3 shell companies, and final destinations are split between offshore accounts in the Caymans and what looks like a real estate portfolio in Panama. How much? Ryan asked. Conservatively? 43 million? Possibly as high as 60 if the patterns hold in the years we haven't fully audited yet. The number sat in the room like a physical presence. Ryan had known it was bad. He hadn't known it was that bad. Can we prove it? Olivia's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white against the table edge. Yes, James said, looking up from his tablet. We have documentation, transfer records, and enough circumstantial evidence to survive any motion to dismiss. The SEC will have questions, but we can answer them. What about criminal charges? That's up to the DA's office, but with this much money, they'll be interested. Olivia nodded slowly. Ryan, you've been quiet. Just processing. He looked at Elena. The offshore accounts, are they in Wallace's name? Shell companies, but he's the beneficial owner on all of them according to the incorporation document Sarah pulled. So he wasn't hiding that hard. He wasn't expecting anyone to look, Elena said. Arrogance makes people sloppy. Ryan thought about that. Wallace had been at Hartwell for 24 years, CFO for the last 12, long enough to feel untouchable, long enough to believe his own myth. When do we move? Ryan asked. Friday, Olivia said. We present to the board at 9, contact the SEC by noon, and Wallace is terminated effective immediately. He'll lawyer up. Let him. We've got better lawyers. James allowed himself a small smile. The meeting went another 2 hours, everyone diving into details, cross-referencing documents, building the case piece by piece. Ryan mostly listened, learning the language of corporate investigations, understanding how evidence translated into action. Around 11, Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and went pale. We have a problem. Everyone stopped. Wallace just sent a meeting request. Him, Olivia, and the board chair. Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Subject line says urgent financial review. The temperature in the room dropped. He knows, James said flatly. He suspects, Olivia corrected. If he knew, he'd already be gone. What do we do? Sarah asked. Olivia looked at Ryan. What would you do? It was a test. He knew it was a test. Ryan thought back 7 years to the 48 hours between when he'd filed his report and when he'd been fired. The panicked feeling of watching the machinery turn against him, too fast to stop. Move the timeline up, he said. Don't wait for Friday. Call the board chair tonight, present everything tomorrow, and have Wallace removed before he can control the narrative. That gives us less than 24 hours to finalize the documentation, Elena said. Then we work through the night. Olivia studied him for a long moment. You sure? He's going to try to do to you what he did to me. Get ahead of it. She pulled out her phone. James, prepare the board presentation. Elena, finalize the financial summary. Sarah, I need a clean data package with every transfer logged and sourced. Ryan, she paused.
Go home. Be with your daughter. This is about to get ugly, and I need you clear-headed tomorrow. I can help. You've done the hard part. Let us handle the paperwork. Ryan wanted to argue, but Emma had a school concert that night, and he'd promised to be there. Okay, but call me if anything changes. You'll be the first to know.
He left the conference room, took the elevator down, walked through the lobby past people who had no idea the building was about to implode. Outside, the city was bright and oblivious. Taxis honking, food carts selling lunch, construction crews jackhammering somewhere in the distance. Normal life continuing like it always did. Ryan got in his car and drove to Emma's school. The concert was exactly what he needed. Off-key recorders, nervous second graders, parents filming on phones they'd forget to watch later. Emma played her 3 notes with intense concentration, and when it was over, she ran to him with a grin that made everything else irrelevant. Did you see me? Saw you, heard you. You crushed it, Bug. Mrs. Chen said I had good rhythm. Mrs. Chen is right. They got pizza because apparently 2 days was in fact enough time between pizzas, and Emma talked about her friend Zoe's upcoming birthday party and whether guinea pigs made good pets and a dozen other things that had nothing to do with fraud or investigations or offshore accounts. Ryan let himself sink into it. This was real. This mattered. The rest was just noise. Back at the apartment, after Emma was asleep, his phone lit up. Olivia. Board chairs on board. Meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Wallace doesn't know yet. Ryan. How'd you convince him? Olivia. Showed him the numbers. He went quiet for about 30 seconds, then asked how fast we could move. Ryan. And? Olivia. I told him we already were. Ryan. See you tomorrow. Olivia. Ryan. Thank you for all of it. He stared at the message for a long time before responding. Ryan. Just doing the right thing. Olivia. Still. It matters. He put the phone down and looked around the apartment. Small living room, hand-me-down furniture, walls that could use a fresh coat of paint, Emma's drawings taped up everywhere, her backpack dumped by the door, her sneakers kicked off in a heap. This was what he'd protected 7 years ago. This was what he'd protect tomorrow. Wednesday morning came faster than Ryan expected. He dropped Emma at school early, watched her run inside with her backpack bouncing, then drove to Hartwell with a knot in his stomach that hadn't been there since the last time he'd walked into a room full of people who controlled his fate. The 15th floor conference room was already full when he arrived. Olivia, Elena, James, Sarah, and 3 people he didn't recognize. Board members, he assumed, based on the age and expensive watches. The board chair was a man in his 60s, white hair, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that came from decades of making decisions that moved markets. Mr. Cole, he said, standing to shake Ryan's hand. Thomas Brennan. I've read your analysis. Impressive work. Thank you. I'm told you were terminated from this company in 2018. Here it was. I was. For fraud I didn't commit. And you came back anyway. Needed a job. This one was hiring. Brennan's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Fair enough. Let's see what you've got. The presentation took 90 minutes. Elena walked through the financial evidence. James covered the legal implications. Sarah displayed the data visualizations that made the theft impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Ryan spoke last, giving the historical context, how he'd uncovered the same pattern in 2018, what had happened when he reported it, and why Wallace had been able to continue operating for 7 more years. The board members took notes, asked questions. Their faces gave away nothing. When it was over, Brennan leaned back in his chair. Where's Wallace now? His office, Olivia said. He thinks he's meeting with me and you at 9. He doesn't know about this. Good. Let's keep it that way until we're ready. Brennan looked at the other board members. I'm calling for an emergency vote to terminate Wallace for cause, effective immediately. All in favor? 3 hands went up without hesitation. Motion carries. Ms. Grant, you'll handle the termination? Yes. Mr. Wong, you'll coordinate with the SEC and provide them everything they need? Already prepared. Then we move. Now, before Wallace has time to disappear money or destroy evidence. Brennan stood. Mr. Cole, You'll accompany Miss Grant to the termination meeting. I want a witness who knows exactly what Wallace did. Ryan's stomach flipped. You want me in the room? I want him to see the man he tried to erase. You have a problem with that? Ryan thought about it, really thought. 7 years ago, he'd been alone in a room while they destroyed him. This time, Wallace would be the one alone. No problem at all. They moved fast after that. Security was briefed. IT was told to lock down Wallace's accounts. HR prepared termination documents. The machinery of corporate consequence finally pointed in the right direction. At 8:55, Ryan and Olivia walked to Wallace's office. Christopher Wallace was 56, graying at the temples, with the kind of face that looked trustworthy in annual reports. He smiled when he saw Olivia, then frowned slightly when he noticed Ryan. Ms. Grant, I wasn't expecting— Who's this? Ryan Cole, Olivia said, closing the door behind them. Director of Financial Oversight. Wallace's smile didn't falter, but something shifted behind his eyes. I don't recall approving that position. You didn't. The board did. Yesterday. I see. Well, welcome aboard, Mr. Cole. He turned to Olivia. Is Thomas joining us? No, this meeting is just us. Oh? Wallace glanced between them, calculation happening in real time. What's this about? Olivia placed a folder on his desk. 9 years of systematic embezzlement. $43 million, conservatively. Offshore accounts in the Caymans, shell companies, fraudulent transfer records. We have documentation for all of it. The color drained from Wallace's face. I don't know what you think you found. We know what we found, Ryan cut in. Same scheme you framed me for in 2018. Same methodology, same transfer patterns, same shell company structure. You just got greedier. Wallace's eyes locked on Ryan, and recognition finally dawned. You. The word came out strangled. You're the analyst? The one you fired for your crime? Yeah. This is— I don't have to listen to this. Wallace stood, reached for his phone. Security has been notified, Olivia said calmly. Your building access is revoked, your accounts are locked, and HR is preparing your termination documents. The SEC will be contacted within the hour. Wallace froze. You can't do this. I can. I am. I'll fight this. I'll sue for wrongful termination, defamation. You'll lose. James Wong stepped into the office, flanked by 2 security guards. We have 9 years of financial records, offshore account documentation, and testimony from multiple witnesses. You can lawyer up all you want. You're done. Wallace looked at each of them, his face shifting from shock to anger to something that looked almost like desperation. Olivia, we can work this out. I've been with this company for 24 years, and you've been stealing from it for at least 9, possibly longer. Her voice was ice. You're terminated for cause, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Wait, my files, my personal items, will be inventoried and returned to you after legal review. Let's go, Mr. Wallace. The security guards moved forward. Wallace's eyes found Ryan one last time. You did this. You came back here just to destroy me. No, Ryan said quietly. I came back here to do my job. You destroyed yourself. They led Wallace out. The office went silent except for the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of phones ringing on other floors. Olivia sat down in Wallace's chair, looking at the space he'd occupied for over a decade. You okay? Ryan asked. I don't know yet. Ask me in a week. She looked up at him. You? Better than I expected. Good, because we're not done. Wallace was the architect, but he had help. Someone in Treasury, someone in accounts receivable. We need to find them before they scatter. Ryan nodded. Then let's get to work. They spent the rest of the day in the war room, pulling threads, following money trails, building cases against the people who'd enabled Wallace's operation. By 6 p.m., they had 2 more names. By 8, those people had been suspended pending investigation. By 10, Ryan was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor and everything to do with the weight of watching something massive finally collapse. He drove home in the dark, got to the apartment just before 11. Emma was asleep at the neighbors. Mrs. Ramirez, who watched her when his shifts ran long. He paid her, thanked her, carried his daughter upstairs half asleep.
Dad? Emma mumbled as he tucked her in. Yeah, Bug? Did the right thing happen? It did. Good.
She was asleep again before he left the room. Ryan stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing, feeling the adrenaline finally drain away. His phone buzzed. Diane Chen. Saw the news. Wallace is out. You okay? Ryan. Yeah, tired. Diane, Asiamin. SEC is moving fast. They'll want to talk to you. Ryan. I know. Diane. Ryan, you did good. Really good. He put the phone down and realized he was shaking. Not from fear. Not from anger. From relief. 7 years of carrying the weight of being erased, of being called a thief, of watching the man who destroyed him walk free. It was done. Not perfect. Not clean. Wallace would fight. The legal process would drag on. The company would take hits. But the truth was finally out. And Ryan Cole was no longer invisible. He made himself a sandwich he didn't eat, took a shower, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Rebuilding systems, implementing oversight, making sure this could never happen again. But tonight, he let himself feel something he hadn't felt in years. Vindication. Vindication lasted exactly 12 hours. Thursday morning, Ryan woke to 17 missed calls and a text from Olivia that just said, "Turn on the news." He grabbed his phone, pulled up the first news site he could find, and felt his stomach drop. The headline screamed across the screen, Hartwell Global CFO fired amid embezzlement allegations. Former employee who exposed fraud was previously terminated for same crime. Below it, a photo of Wallace being escorted from the building. And next to that, an older photo Ryan barely recognized. Himself, 7 years younger, in a suit he'd donated to Goodwill, leaving Hartwell's offices with a box of personal items. Someone had leaked everything. His phone rang. Olivia. Did you see it? She asked without preamble. Yeah. Wallace's lawyer released a statement an hour ago. They're claiming you fabricated evidence as revenge for your termination, that you manipulated the investigation to frame him. Ryan sat down hard on the edge of his bed. That's insane. Yes, also exactly what we should have expected. Papers rustled on her end. They're trying to flip the narrative before the SEC can build their case. Make you the villain, Wallace the victim. Will it work? Not with the evidence we have, but it'll muddy the waters enough to buy him time. She paused. Ryan, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Media's going to dig into your past. Wallace's team will try to discredit everything you touched. And we're going to have to prove this case twice, once to the SEC and once to public opinion. What do you need me to do? Come in. We have damage control to run. Emma appeared in his doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Dad, why are you up? Ryan covered the phone. Work stuff, Bug. Get dressed. I'll make breakfast. You look worried. I'm fine. 5 minutes, okay? She nodded and shuffled back to her room. Ryan uncovered the phone. I'll be there in an hour. Ryan, Olivia's voice shifted, got quieter. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this. Not your fault. It's my company. Everything that happens here is my fault. He almost laughed. That's not how fault works. Tell that to the board. See you soon. Ryan made Emma pancakes and tried to act normal, but she kept giving him sideways looks that said she wasn't buying it. The thing at work got bigger, didn't it? She finally asked. Yeah? Bad bigger or just complicated bigger? Complicated, but I'm handling it. Emma pushed a piece of pancake through syrup, creating patterns. Mrs. Ramirez's daughter works at a hospital. She says complicated usually means bad, but people don't want to say it. Mrs. Ramirez's daughter is very wise, but I promise we're okay. You'd tell me if we weren't, right? Ryan reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Always. She seemed satisfied with that, went back to her breakfast. But when he dropped her at school, she hugged him longer than usual. Whatever happened, she said into his shoulder, you're still the good guy. Ryan's throat tightened. How do you know? Because you're my dad. Good guys make mistakes, but they don't stop being good. He held her close, memorizing the moment, then watched her run inside to join her friends. 7 years old and already wiser than half the people he'd meet today. The Hartwell building was under siege when Ryan arrived. News vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions at anyone who looked important enough to matter. Security had doubled, checking IDs with extra scrutiny, turning away anyone without clearance. Ryan kept his head down, flashed his badge, and made it to the elevator before anyone recognized him. The 15th floor was chaos. Phones ringing constantly, people rushing between offices, the particular energy of a crisis in full bloom. Elena was arguing with someone on speakerphone, James was typing furiously on his laptop, and Sarah looked like she hadn't slept. Olivia saw him and jerked her head toward the conference room. Inside, Thomas Brennan was already there, along with two people Ryan didn't recognize. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a younger man carrying a tablet like it was a weapon. Ryan Cole? Meet Rebecca Torres, our head of PR, and Michael Lynn, our corporate communications director, Olivia said. They're going to help us manage the media narrative. Rebecca stood, shook his hand with a grip that meant business. Mr. Cole, I've been briefing myself on your situation. What Wallace's team is doing is standard playbook for white-collar defense. Attack the witness, muddy the evidence, buy time for a settlement. Can they actually make people believe I faked $43 million in transfers? They don't need people to believe it. They just need to create enough doubt that the story becomes he said, instead of executive caught stealing. Doubt is their best friend right now. Michael pulled up something on his tablet. We've already got 3 major outlets running versions of Wallace's statement. 2 of them are calling you the disgruntled former employee. One is questioning why Hartwell would hire someone previously fired for fraud. I was never convicted of anything. Doesn't matter. The optics are terrible. He showed Ryan the screen. A cable news segment with his photo next to Wallace's. A chyron reading, whistleblower or revenge scheme. Ryan felt sick. So what do we do? Olivia asked. Rebecca leaned forward. We get ahead of it. Full transparency, controlled narrative. Ryan does an interview, major outlet, reputable journalist, and tells his side. We provide documentation to back up everything he says, and we make it clear that this isn't about revenge. It's about protecting the company and everyone who works here. Absolutely not, Ryan said immediately. Everyone turned to look at him. I'm not doing interviews. I have a daughter who goes to public school and doesn't need her friend's parents seeing her dad on TV defending himself against theft charges. Ryan, Olivia started. No, find another way. There is no other way, Michael said. You stay silent. Wallace controls the story. Right now, he's the respected executive being smeared by a vindictive subordinate. You need to flip that. I don't care. You should, Rebecca said, not unkindly, because if this narrative sticks, the SEC investigation gets compromised. Wallace potentially walks, and your name stays connected to fraud forever. You want Emma growing up with that following you? The room went quiet. Ryan's hands clenched under the table. This is exactly what happened 7 years ago. I tried to do the right thing and got destroyed for it. Now I'm doing it again, and you're telling me the only option is to put a target on my back and hope people believe me this time? No, Olivia said quietly. We're telling you the only option is to fight back, and you won't be alone this time. Ryan looked at her, really looked. She was exhausted, her perfect CEO armor starting to show cracks, but her eyes were steady. If I do this, he said slowly, we do it my way. I pick the journalist, I control what gets shared about Emma, and if it starts affecting her, we shut it down immediately. Agreed, Rebecca said, and I want legal protection. Whatever happens, Wallace doesn't get to come after me or my daughter. Already drawn up, James said, sliding a folder across the table. Whistleblower protections, restraining order provisions if needed, and a clause that makes Hartwell responsible for your legal defense if Wallace sues. Ryan flipped through the pages, seeing Diane Chen's influence in the language. She'd been busy. Okay, he said finally. Set it up. Rebecca nodded and immediately started typing on her phone. I've got a contact at the Journal. Investigative reporter, solid reputation, won't sensationalize. I'll reach out. How fast can we move? Brennan asked. If they're interested, interview by tomorrow, story runs over the weekend. Make it happen. The meeting broke apart after that, everyone scattering to their assigned crisis tasks. Ryan found himself alone with Olivia in the corridor outside. You didn't have to agree to the interview, she said. Yeah, I did. Rebecca's right. Staying quiet just makes it worse. Still, I know this isn't what you signed up for. Ryan leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of the last 72 hours settling into his bones. What did you sign up for? When you took over this company? Olivia considered the question. Stability. Proof that I earned the position. Maybe some respect. She laughed, but it had no humor in it. Definitely not cleaning up a decade-long embezzlement scheme and rehabilitating a man I wrongfully destroyed. You didn't destroy me. Wallace did. I signed the paper. Because he gave you bad information. I should have verified it. They stood there, two people carrying different versions of the same guilt. You know what's funny? Ryan said. 7 years ago, I hated you. Spent months imagining what I'd say if I ever saw you again. All the ways I'd make you understand what you'd done. And now? Now I realize you were just as trapped as I was. Different cage, same trap. Olivia's eyes got bright for a second, but she blinked it away. We should get back to work. Yeah. But neither of them moved. Ryan? She turned to face him fully. After this is over, after Wallace is prosecuted and the company stabilizes and everything goes back to whatever normal looks like, what do you want? Honestly, I don't know yet. Ask me when I'm not running on 4 hours of sleep and existential dread. She smiled, small, real. Fair enough. They went back to the war room. The interview was scheduled for Friday afternoon at a neutral location, a hotel conference room downtown, away from the Hartwell building and the media circus surrounding it. Ryan spent Thursday night preparing, going over his timeline with Diane and Rebecca, making sure every detail was documented and defensible. Emma noticed he was distracted during dinner. You're doing the thing again, she said, waving her fork at him. What thing? Where your face is here, but your brain is somewhere else. Ryan put down his own fork. Sorry, Bug. Just got a lot on my mind. The work stuff? Yeah. Are people being mean to you? The question hit harder than it should have. Some people are saying things that aren't true. I'm trying to fix that. Emma thought about this while chewing her broccoli. Like when Marcus Johnson said I cheated on the spelling test and Mrs. Chen had to tell everyone I didn't? Kind of like that, yeah. That sucked. It really did. But then everyone knew Marcus was lying and felt bad for believing him. She pointed her fork at Ryan with 7-year-old conviction. Same thing's going to happen with you. People will figure out the truth. Hope you're right. I'm always right. Ask anyone. Ryan laughed despite everything. Noted. After Emma was asleep, he sat in the kitchen with his laptop, scrolling through the news coverage. Most of it was ugly. Speculation about his motives, questions about why Hartwell would hire someone with his history, think pieces about corporate whistleblowing and revenge. A few outlets were more balanced, noting that no charges had ever been filed against Ryan in 2018, that the current evidence against Wallace was substantial, that the SEC was taking the allegations seriously. But Rebecca was right. Doubt was spreading. The story was becoming muddy, complicated, exactly what Wallace's lawyers wanted. His phone buzzed. Olivia, how are you holding up? Ryan, been better, been worse. Olivia, that's not an answer. Ryan, it's the only one I've got right now. Olivia, fair. For what it's worth, you're doing better than I would in your position. Ryan, you run a billion-dollar company. You do this stuff all the time. Olivia, I make strategic decisions in boardrooms. That's different than having your life picked apart in public. Ryan, is it though? I've seen the articles about you. They're not exactly kind. Olivia, being called ambitious and cold is different than being called a thief. Ryan, both suck. Olivia, both suck. A pause, then another message. Olivia, get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Ryan, you too. Olivia, I'll try. Good night, Ryan. Ryan, night. He closed his laptop and sat in the dark, listening to the building settle around him, the distant sound of traffic, Emma's soft breathing from her room. Tomorrow, he'd tell his story to a journalist who'd decide how to frame it. The weekend, it would run. By Monday, the world would have an opinion about who Ryan Cole was and whether he deserved to be believed. And there was absolutely nothing he could do to control how it landed. Friday morning came with rain, the kind of gray downpour that made the city look like a noir film. Ryan dropped Emma at school, watched her disappear inside, then drove to the hotel where the interview was scheduled. Rebecca and Michael were already there, along with Diane and a woman Ryan assumed was the journalist. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, carrying a recorder and a notebook that looked well used. "Mr. Cole, I'm Jennifer Harding," she said, offering her hand. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." "Not sure I had much choice." "You always have a choice. The question is whether the alternatives are worse." She gestured to the chairs arranged in a corner of the room. "Shall we?" They sat. Jennifer placed her recorder between them, tested it, then looked at Ryan with an expression that was professional but not unkind. "I've reviewed the documentation your team provided. The evidence against Wallace is substantial, but I need to understand your side, not just the numbers, but the story. Why you came back to Hartwell, what you saw, why you decided to act. Can you walk me through that?" Ryan took a breath and started talking. He told her about being fired in 2018, about the fabricated evidence and the NDA, and the decision to take the settlement because he had a 6-month-old daughter and no realistic path to winning. He explained how he'd ended up in maintenance, how he'd recognized the fraud patterns, how he'd spent weeks deciding whether to stay silent or speak up. Jennifer asked good questions, not accusatory, but probing. Why had he kept the evidence spreadsheet if he wasn't planning to use it? How could he be certain Wallace was behind the scheme? What did he hope to gain by exposing it now? Ryan answered honestly. Sometimes he stumbled, searching for words that would convey the complexity of choosing between safety and truth. Sometimes he got angry, remembering the casual cruelty of being erased. Sometimes his voice got quiet, talking about Emma and what he wanted her to learn about standing up even when it cost you. Jennifer took notes, asked follow-ups, circled back to details that didn't quite line up. After 90 minutes, she turned off the recorder. "Off the record," she said, "this is one of the more interesting stories I've covered. Not because of the fraud, corporate embezzlement happens all the time, but because you came back. Most people in your position would have walked away and never looked back." "Maybe I should have." "Maybe, but you didn't." She packed up her recorder. "I can't promise the story will change everyone's mind. Wallace's team has already planted seeds of doubt, and some people will believe them regardless of evidence. But I'll write it fairly. What happens after that is up to the readers. That's all I'm asking." Jennifer stood, shook his hand again. "One more question, off the record. If you could go back 7 years and do it all differently, would you?" Ryan thought about it. "No," he said finally, "because 7 years ago led to Emma and this apartment and a life that's smaller but mine. If I changed that, I might lose what matters." Jennifer nodded slowly. "That's a good answer." She left, and Ryan sat alone in the conference room, staring at the rain streaking down the windows. Rebecca came in a few minutes later. "How'd it feel?" she asked. "Like bleeding in public." "That's about right. But you did well. Jennifer's fair. She'll write a balanced piece." "And if people don't believe it?" "Then we keep fighting. That's how this works." Ryan rubbed his face, feeling the exhaustion in every muscle. "I hate this." "I know, but you're doing it anyway. That counts for something." The article ran Sunday morning. Ryan didn't read it immediately. He made Emma pancakes, took her to the park even though the ground was still wet from Friday's rain, let her climb on the jungle gym while he pushed aside the knowledge that somewhere people were forming opinions about him based on words in a newspaper. Around noon, his phone started buzzing. Diane. "Article's good, really good. She got it right." Olivia. "Have you read it yet?" Marcus. "Saw the news, man. Proud of you." Even Patricia, Olivia's assistant. "Well done, Mr. Cole." Emma noticed him checking his phone and gave him a look. "You said no phones at the park." "You're right. Sorry." He pocketed it. "Want to get ice cream?" "It's not even 1 o'clock. Rebel lunch. What do you say?" She grinned. "Yes." They got ice cream and sat on a bench watching joggers and dogs and the normal flow of Sunday life. "Dad?" Emma said, around a mouthful of mint chip. "Yeah, Bug?" "Whatever happened at work, did it work out okay?" "I think so. Won't know for sure for a while, but it's heading the right direction." "Good. Because you deserve good things." Ryan pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "So do you." That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan finally read the article. Jennifer had structured it carefully, laying out the evidence against Wallace first, establishing the facts before diving into Ryan's story. She'd included quotes from Olivia and the board, documentation from Elena's audit, legal analysis from outside experts. Then she told Ryan's side, not as a villain's redemption or a victim's vindication, but as a complicated human story about a man who'd made an impossible choice twice and lived with the consequences both times. The headline read, "The Man Who Cleaned Floors Where He Once Worked and Exposed the Fraud That Ended His Career." Ryan read it 3 times, waiting for the anger or the satisfaction or whatever he was supposed to feel. Instead, he just felt tired. And maybe, underneath the exhaustion, the smallest flicker of hope that this time, the truth would be enough. Monday morning, Ryan walked into Hartwell expecting more chaos. Instead, he found something different. People nodded as he passed. A few stopped him to say they'd read the article, that they believed him, that they were glad he'd spoken up. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder in the elevator. "Told you you weren't furniture, brother." Patricia had coffee waiting when he reached the executive floor. "How you take it?" "Black's fine, thank you." "Mr. Brennan wants to see you and Miss Grant at 9. Ryan found Olivia in her office, reading something on her computer with an expression he couldn't quite parse. "Morning," he said. She looked up. "SEC called. They're moving forward with charges against Wallace. Federal prosecutors are interested too." "That's good, right?" "That's very good. Means the article worked. Public pressure, documented evidence, clear narrative. They can't ignore it now." Ryan sat down across from her. "So what happens next?" "Investigation continues, probably for months. Wallace fights it, we provide evidence. Eventually it goes to trial, or he takes a plea deal." She closed her laptop. "For us, we rebuild. Implement the oversight systems you've been designing, hire auditors, prove to the world that Hartwell is clean." "Sounds like a lot of work." "It is. You still want the job?" Ryan thought about it, really thought, the way Emma had taught him to. "Yeah," he said. "I do." Olivia smiled. "Good, because we need you." The meeting with Brennan was short and formal. He thanked them both, said the board was pleased with how they'd handled the crisis, asked Ryan if he needed anything. "Time," Ryan said, "to build the systems right, not fast." "You've got it." After Ryan and Olivia stood in the corridor outside Brennan's office. "You know," Olivia said, "I still can't believe you came back here. To this building, this company, after everything. Didn't have much choice at the time. But you stayed. Even after you found the fraud, you could have left. Could have sent the evidence anonymously and disappeared." Ryan shook his head. "Anonymous tips get ignored. I learned that the hard way." "So you put yourself in the line of fire instead." "Someone had to." Olivia looked at him for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone angrier, maybe. Someone who wanted to watch me fail." "I was angry. For a long time." Ryan glanced toward the window, the city spreading out below them. "But anger's exhausting, and Emma's watching. I'd rather she see me build something than tear something down." "Even if tearing it down would feel better?" "Especially then." Olivia nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. "I'm glad you're here, Ryan. I'm glad you didn't give up on this place." "I gave up on it 7 years ago. I'm just here because the bills need paying and Emma needs braces in 2 years. Still, I'm glad." They walked back to the 15th floor together, back to the war room where Elena and James and Sarah were already deep in the next phase of the investigation. The work wasn't done. Wouldn't be done for a long time. But for the first time since he'd walked back into this building 2 years ago, Ryan felt like he was building toward something instead of just surviving. That had to count for something. That had to count for something, Ryan told himself. But 3 weeks later, standing in the principal's office at Emma's school, he wondered if he'd been lying to himself about what building something actually cost. Mrs. Patterson, the principal, had kind eyes but a firm mouth. The kind of educator who'd seen every version of childhood crisis and knew how to handle most of them. "Mr. Cole, thank you for coming in on short notice." Ryan glanced at Emma, sitting in the chair next to him with her backpack clutched on her lap. She looked small and miserable. "What happened?" "There was an incident at recess. Emma got into an altercation with another student. Emma doesn't get into altercations. Dad! Emma's voice was barely audible. Mrs. Patterson opened a folder. According to the recess monitor, Marcus Johnson, yes, the same boy from the spelling test incident, was showing other students something on his phone. When Emma asked what it was, he showed her an article about you, with your photo, from the Hartwell investigation. Ryan's stomach dropped. He told the other kids your dad was a thief who got caught and blamed someone else, Emma said quietly, not looking at Ryan. He said you were lying, and everyone knew it. And what did you do? Mrs. Patterson asked gently. I pushed him, hard. He fell down and scraped his knee. Ryan closed his eyes. Emma also used some language that's not appropriate for school, Mrs. Patterson continued. I won't repeat it, but it was colorful. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. But he was lying about Dad, and everyone was listening, and I couldn't. Her voice broke. Ryan put his hand on her shoulder. It's okay, Bug. It's not okay. I hurt someone. You always say violence isn't the answer. I know. Mrs. Patterson folded her hands on the desk. Emma, why don't you wait outside while I talk to your father? Emma nodded, grabbed her backpack, and fled. Once the door closed, Mrs. Patterson's expression softened slightly. I'm not suspending her. The situation was complicated. Marcus has been spoken to about bringing his phone to school and showing inappropriate content to other students. His parents have been called as well. Thank you. But, Mr. Cole, I need to be direct with you. This isn't the first time Emma's been defending you lately. Last week, she got into a heated argument with another student during social studies about what makes someone a good person. 2 weeks ago, she was caught crying in the bathroom after overhearing teachers discussing the Hartwell story in the break room. Ryan felt like he'd been punched. I didn't know. She's trying to protect you. 7-year-olds shouldn't have to protect their parents from public scrutiny. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward. I read the article in the journal. I believe you for what it's worth. But Emma is dealing with fallout that's beyond her capacity to process. She needs support. I'll talk to her. I think she needs more than a talk. Have you considered counseling? She's 7, which is exactly why she needs help navigating this. What you're going through, what she's going through by extension, it's not normal childhood stress. It's adult-level crisis management, and she doesn't have the tools for that yet. Ryan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of every decision he'd made in the last month settling on his shoulders. I'll look into it. Good. And Mr. Cole? For what it's worth, Emma's a remarkable kid. Bright, compassionate, fiercely loyal. Whatever you're doing as a father, you're doing it right. But even the best parents can't shield their children from everything. I'm figuring that out. Emma was sitting on the bench outside the office, swinging her legs, when Ryan emerged. Am I in trouble? She asked. Not with me, but we're going to talk about the pushing. I know, violence isn't the answer. It's not. But I also know Marcus was being cruel, and defending people you love is hard. Ryan sat down next to her. Here's the thing, Bug. What's happening with my work? It's complicated grown-up stuff, and some of it's going to be in the news for a while. Some people are going to believe lies about me. That's not fair, but it's reality. So I'm just supposed to let them say mean things? You're supposed to remember that what other people say doesn't change who I am, or who you are. He turned to face her fully. I don't need you to fight my battles, Emma. I need you to be 7 and do kid things and not carry weight that's mine to carry. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But what if they keep saying you're bad? Then they're wrong, and eventually they'll figure that out. But even if they don't, it doesn't matter. You know the truth. I know the truth. The people who actually matter know the truth. That's enough. It doesn't feel like enough. I know, but it has to be. Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Are you mad at me? For defending me? No. For pushing Marcus? Also no, but don't do it again. I won't. And Bug? Mrs. Patterson thinks you should talk to someone, a counselor. Someone who's not me, who can help you deal with all this stuff. Emma looked horrified. You think I'm crazy? I think you're dealing with things no kid should have to deal with. And talking to someone who's trained to help might make it easier. just like I talk to Diane when legal stuff gets complicated. Will you be mad if I say things about you to the counselor? Absolutely not. You can say whatever you need to say. I won't even ask what you talked about unless you want to tell me. Emma thought about this for a long moment. Okay, I'll try it. That's all I'm asking. They drove home in silence. Emma stared out the window. Ryan gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, both of them processing in their own ways. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan called Diane. I need a referral for a child therapist. Diane didn't ask questions, just said she'd send him names by morning. Then Ryan called Olivia. I need to take tomorrow off, family stuff. Everything okay? Not really. Emma's dealing with fallout from the article. She pushed a kid at school who was showing people news stories about me. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Ryan, I'm so sorry. Not your fault. It's my company, my mess. Your daughter shouldn't be paying for it. She's not paying for your mess. She's paying for me choosing to expose it. Ryan rubbed his face. I knew there'd be consequences. I just didn't think they'd land on her. What do you need? Time off, resources, anything? Just tomorrow. I need to be present, figure out counseling, make sure she's okay. Take the rest of the week if you need it. I can't. We're in the middle of building the oversight protocols. Ryan, Olivia's voice was firm. The oversight protocols will wait. Your daughter can't. Take the time. He wanted to argue, but she was right. Okay, thanks. And Ryan, if there's anything else we can do, legal support, PR help, anything, just ask. I will. He hung up and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the apartment settle around him. This was what he'd been afraid of 7 years ago. This exact scenario. Emma caught in the crossfire of his choices, dealing with consequences she didn't create and couldn't control. He thought he could protect her by staying silent back then. Now he'd tried to protect everyone by speaking up, and she was still getting hurt. Maybe there was no right answer. Maybe every choice came with a cost, and the best you could do was pick which price you were willing to pay. Ryan spent Tuesday and Wednesday with Emma. They didn't talk about school or the news or Wallace or any of it. They went to the aquarium, made cookies that turned out lopsided, watched movies that required zero brain power. On Thursday, they met with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a child psychologist Diane had recommended. Dr. Mitchell was younger than Ryan expected, maybe late 30s, with an office full of toys and art supplies and comfortable chairs that didn't feel clinical. Emma, your dad tells me you've been having a tough time lately, she said after the introductions were done. Emma shrugged. Kind of. Want to tell me about it? Not really. Dr. Mitchell smiled. That's fair. How about this? Your dad's going to wait in the waiting room and you and I are going to hang out for a bit. We can talk if you want, or we can draw, or play with the sand table. Whatever feels right. Sound okay? Emma glanced at Ryan. I'll be right outside, he said. Dr. Mitchell's here to help. You promise you're not mad at me? Promise. Emma nodded and let Dr. Mitchell lead her to the art supplies. Ryan sat in the waiting room for 45 minutes, checking his phone compulsively, even though there was nothing urgent waiting. When the session ended, Emma looked tired, but maybe a little lighter. How'd it go? Ryan asked in the car. Okay, she's nice. We drew pictures and talked about feelings and stuff. Want to go back? Maybe. She said I could come once a week if I wanted, to practice dealing with hard stuff. What do you think? Emma stared out the window. I think I want to try. Is that okay? More than okay, Bug. I'm proud of you. For what? I didn't do anything. You're trying. That's something. The weekend came and went. Emma seemed better, or at least more stable. She went to a birthday party at Zoe's house and came back covered in cake frosting and talking about how they'd played some game Ryan didn't understand, but that involved a lot of screaming. Normal kid stuff. Finally. Monday morning, Ryan walked back into Hartwell and found the war room transformed. Whiteboards covered in diagrams, flowcharts showing the new oversight systems. Elena and Sarah deep in conversation about audit frequencies. Welcome back, James said without looking up from his laptop. How's your daughter? Better. Thanks for asking. Good. We've got a problem. Of course they did. Ryan sat down. What kind of problem? Elena turned from the whiteboard. Wallace's defense team filed a motion to suppress evidence. They're claiming the investigation was illegally conducted, that you lacked authority to access the financial records you used to build the initial case. I didn't access anything. I analyzed publicly available financial statements. They know that. But they're arguing that once you were hired as Director of Oversight, any evidence you touched became tainted because you had a personal vendetta. Ryan felt his jaw tighten. That's garbage. It's strategy, James said. They're trying to get the evidence thrown out on procedural grounds before it ever gets to the substance. If they succeed, the SEC case gets significantly weaker. Can they actually win that argument? Probably not, but they can delay the process by months, maybe years, and delay is almost as good as victory for white-collar cases. Witnesses forget details, public attention moves on, settlements become more attractive than trials. Ryan stood up, walked to the window. The city looked the same as it always did. People rushing to work, cars clogging intersections, the machinery of normal life grinding forward. What do we do? He asked. We fight it, Olivia said from the doorway. Ryan hadn't heard her come in. James files a response. We provide documentation showing the investigation was conducted properly, and we make it clear that Wallace's claims are baseless. And if the judge agrees with Wallace, then we appeal. And we keep fighting until we win or run out of legal options. She walked to the table, set down her coffee. Ryan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Are you still all in on this? Because the next 6 months are going to be brutal. More legal motions, more media coverage, possibly more fallout for Emma. If you need to step back, I understand. But I need to know now. Ryan thought about Emma and Dr. Mitchell's office, practicing how to deal with hard stuff, about Marcus Johnson and his phone and the way kids could be cruel without even understanding what they were doing, about the last 7 years of being invisible and the strange relief of finally being seen, even if some of what people saw was distorted. I'm in, he said, but I need parameters. Name them. Emma comes first, always. If this starts affecting her in ways we can't manage, I'm out. No discussion, no negotiation. Agreed. And I need you to be honest with me about the odds. No corporate spin, no optimistic projections. If we're losing, I need to know. Olivia nodded. You have my word. Then let's fight. The legal battle became a war of attrition. Wallace's team filed motion after motion, challenges to evidence, requests for postponements, demands for additional discovery. Each one required a response, documentation, hours of James and his team crafting arguments that satisfied both legal standards and the court of public opinion. Ryan's days became a blur of meetings, document reviews, and testimony prep. The SEC wanted detailed statements about what he'd found and how he'd found it. Federal prosecutors were building their own case and needed coordination with the civil investigation. Hartwell's board wanted regular updates on the oversight systems he was implementing. He worked 60-hour weeks, came home exhausted, and tried to be present for Emma even when his brain was still stuck in conference rooms. Emma's therapy sessions continued. Every Thursday at 4, Ryan drove her to Dr. Mitchell's office and waited while she processed things he couldn't help her with. How's she doing? He asked Dr. Mitchell during one of their brief check-ins. Better. She's learning to separate what she can control from what she can't. That's a hard lesson for adults, let alone 7-year-olds. Is she talking about what's happening at school? Some. She's also talking about you, how she worries you're not taking care of yourself, how she wishes things were simpler. Dr. Mitchell paused. Ryan, Emma's resilient, but resilience isn't infinite. She needs to see you coping, not just surviving. I'm doing the best I can. I know, but maybe your best includes asking for help too. The words stuck with him. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan did something he hadn't done in 7 years. He called his brother. David Cole lived in Oregon, taught high school physics, and had exactly zero interest in corporate drama. They'd grown apart after Ryan's firing, not from anger, just from the natural drift of people whose lives no longer overlapped. Ryan? David sounded surprised. Everything okay? Yeah, no, I don't know. Ryan leaned against the kitchen counter. You heard about the Hartwell thing? Saw some headlines. Didn't want to pry if you didn't want to talk about it. I'm in the middle of it. Exposed the fraud, now I'm fighting the legal battle, and it's affecting Emma. David was quiet for a moment. What do you need? Honestly, I don't know, maybe just to hear someone tell me I'm not screwing everything up. You're not screwing everything up. You're dealing with an impossible situation and trying to protect your kid at the same time. That's not screwing up. That's just hard. Ryan felt something loosen in his chest. Emma's in therapy now because of all this. Good. Therapy's not a failure, Ryan. It's a tool, like getting your car fixed when it's making weird noises instead of waiting for the engine to blow. When did you get wise? Around the same time I realized teaching teenagers means half my job is being their unpaid therapist. David paused. You want me to come visit? I've got spring break in 2 weeks. Could fly out, hang with Emma, give you some backup. Ryan hadn't realized how much he needed that offer until he heard it. Yeah, that'd be good. Then I'm there. Send me your schedule, I'll book flights. They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. David's students, the weather in Oregon, whether their mother would ever stop sending them both articles about retirement planning, even though they were in their 30s. When Ryan hung up, he felt steadier. Dr. Mitchell was right. Coping meant asking for help. February turned into March. The legal motions continued, but James was winning more than he was losing. Wallace's attempts to suppress evidence were failing, and the SEC was building a case that looked increasingly airtight. The media coverage started shifting too. More outlets were picking up the story of the janitor-turned-whistleblower, and most of them were framing it as a David versus Goliath narrative with Ryan as the unlikely hero. He hated that framing almost as much as he'd hated being called a thief. I'm not a hero, he told Olivia during one of their increasingly rare moments alone. I'm just a guy who saw something wrong and couldn't live with ignoring it. That's what heroes do, Olivia said. Heroes don't let their kids get bullied at school because of their choices. Heroes aren't perfect. They're just people who act when acting is hard. Ryan shook his head. You've been reading too many press releases. Olivia smiled. Probably, but I'm not wrong. They were in her office, late afternoon, the building mostly empty as people headed home for the day. Olivia looked as tired as Ryan felt. The investigation had consumed her life too, between board meetings and media appearances and the constant pressure of keeping a company stable while its foundation was being rebuilt. Can I ask you something? Ryan said. Always. Do you regret it? Taking over this company? Dealing with all this mess? Olivia thought about it, really thought. No, I regret what happened to you 7 years ago. I regret not asking better questions. But taking over Hartwell? Even with everything that's happened? No. This company employs 3,000 people. It matters. And if I can make it better than it was, if I can build something that actually deserves the trust people put in it, then the mess is worth it. That's a very CEO answer. It's also true. She looked at him. What about you? Do you regret coming back here? Ryan considered the question. Ask me in a year, he said finally, when Emma's doing better and Wallace is either in prison or bankrupted by legal fees and the oversight systems are actually working. Ask me then. Fair enough. David's visit came at exactly the right time. He showed up with a duffel bag, a terrible sense of humor, and an immediate rapport with Emma that made Ryan realize how much his daughter needed family beyond just him. They went to the Science Museum, where David explained physics concepts in ways that made Emma laugh. They cooked dinner together, making a mess of the kitchen that somehow turned into the best pasta Ryan had eaten in months. They played board games where David let Emma win, but made it look like she'd earned it. And when Emma was asleep, David and Ryan sat in the living room with beers and had the kind of conversation they hadn't had in years. She's a good kid, David said. You're doing right by her. Doesn't always feel like it. Never does. But she's happy. She's smart. She knows she's loved. That's the foundation. Everything else is just noise. The noise is pretty loud right now. David shrugged. So turn it down. You can't control what Wallace does or what the media says or how other parents look at you. You can control whether you show up for Emma every day, which you do. So stop beating yourself up for the stuff that's outside your power. Ryan stared at his beer bottle. When did you turn into a philosopher? When I started teaching kids whose lives are way harder than anything we dealt with growing up. Puts things in perspective. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only existed between people who'd known each other their whole lives. You seen anyone? David asked eventually. What? Dating, romance, human connection beyond your daughter and coworkers. Ryan laughed. Are you serious? I'm just saying, you're 32, not dead. And from what Emma told me, you spend all your time working or taking care of her. That's not sustainable. I don't have time for dating. You don't make time for dating. Different thing. David leaned back. Look, I'm not saying you need to get married or whatever, but maybe having one part of your life that isn't connected to Hartwell or Emma would be good for you. I'll keep that in mind. You're dismissing me. I'm absolutely dismissing you. David grinned. Fair enough, but think about it. After David left, Ryan found himself actually thinking about it. Not seriously. He barely had enough hours in the day to handle work and Emma, let alone add another person to the mix. But the idea that his life could eventually include something beyond survival and crisis management was oddly comforting. Maybe someday. April brought the first real victory. The judge ruled against Wallace's motion to suppress evidence, delivering a scathing opinion that called the defense team's arguments creative but ultimately meritless. James walked into the war room with a rare smile. We won. Clean win, no ambiguity. Elena actually cheered. Sarah high-fived nobody in particular. Ryan felt the tension he'd been carrying for months ease slightly. What happens now? He asked. Now the SEC moves forward with formal charges. Wallace can settle or go to trial, but either way, he's facing serious consequences. Criminal charges are likely to follow. How long until it's actually over? Months, maybe a year if he drags it out. But we've cleared the biggest hurdle. From here, it's just a matter of letting the process run. That night, Ryan told Emma the simplified version over dinner. The bad guy lost an important fight in court. Doesn't mean everything's fixed, but it means we're winning. Emma nodded slowly. So, things will get better? They should, slowly, but yeah, good. Because I'm tired of being the kid whose dad is in the news. Ryan reached across the table, squeezed her hand. I know, Bug. Me too. But Dad? Emma looked up at him. Dr. Mitchell says, even when hard things are over, we should remember what we learned from them. So they weren't just hard for nothing. What'd you learn? Emma thought about it. That pushing people is still wrong even when they're being mean. And that talking about feelings is less scary than I thought. And that you're braver than I knew. Ryan's throat tightened. I'm not brave, Emma. I'm just trying to do what's right. Dr. Mitchell says that's what brave means. Dr. Mitchell is very smart. I know. That's why you pay her. Ryan laughed despite everything. Later, after Emma was asleep, he sat in the kitchen with his laptop and did something he hadn't done in months. He opened a blank document and started writing. Not a report or an analysis or anything work-related. Just thoughts. About the last 7 years, about the choices he'd made, about what he wanted his life to look like when the dust finally settled. The list was shorter than he expected. Emma, happy and stable and knowing she was loved. A job that mattered but didn't consume him. A life that felt like his, not something he was surviving through. That was it. Everything else, the vindication, the public redemption, even Wallace's prosecution, was secondary. Ryan stared at the list for a long time, then saved the document and closed his laptop. 3 things. Seemed simple. But simple didn't mean easy. And easy had never been an option anyway. Simple didn't mean easy, and the next 3 months proved it. May arrived with Wallace's formal indictment on 12 counts of embezzlement, wire fraud, and securities violations. The news made headlines again, briefly reviving the media circus Ryan had hoped was finally dying down. Emma handled it better this time. Dr. Mitchell had given her tools, ways to redirect conversations, scripts for when kids ask questions, permission to say, I don't want to talk about that, without feeling guilty. Marcus tried to show his phone again at lunch, Emma reported one afternoon, climbing into the car after school. But I just walked away and played tetherball with Zoe instead. How'd that feel? Better than pushing him. She buckled her seatbelt. Dr. Mitchell was right. I can't control what he does, just what I do. That's very mature of you. I know. I'm basically an adult now. Ryan smiled. Basically. What do adults want for dinner? Pizza. Obviously. Some things never changed. At work, the oversight systems Ryan had designed were finally being implemented. New audit protocols, transparent reporting structures, Whistleblower protections that actually meant something. Elena had taken over most of the day-to-day operations, freeing Ryan up to focus on the bigger picture. It was strange having breathing room. For months, every day had been crisis management. Now it was just work. Important work, but not the all-consuming emergency that had defined his life since December. "You look bored," Olivia observed during a meeting in early June. "Not bored, just adjusting to things being less chaotic." "Is that a problem?" Ryan considered it. "I don't know yet. Feels weird not being in survival mode." Olivia nodded slowly. "I know what you mean. I keep waiting for the next disaster, the next emergency. Then I remember we actually fixed the problem this time. Most of it, anyway. Most is better than none." They were in the 15th floor conference room reviewing quarterly reports that actually reflected reality for the first time in years. The company had taken a hit, stock price down, some clients nervous, competitors circling, but it was stabilizing. Thomas Brennan had told the board that transparency and accountability were worth more than short-term profits. Half the board had agreed enthusiastically. The other half had grumbled but gone along. Progress? Imperfect, but real. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said, closing her laptop. "Sure." "What are you going to do when this is actually over? When Wallace is sentenced and the oversight systems are running and you don't have to think about any of this anymore?" Ryan hadn't let himself think that far ahead. The question landed heavier than it should have. "I don't know," he admitted. "Keep doing this job, I guess. Make sure what we built actually works. And if you get bored, then I'll figure something else out. Why?" Olivia hesitated, which was unusual for her. "Because I've been thinking about what happens next for me, too. I've spent 7 years proving I deserved this position, then another 6 months cleaning up a mess I inherited. At some point, I'd like to actually run the company instead of constantly fixing it." "Makes sense. And I've been thinking about what kind of leadership team I want. People I trust. People who've proven they'll do the right thing even when it costs them." Ryan saw where this was going. "Olivia, I want you as CFO." The words hung in the air between them. Ryan stared at her. "You're joking." "I'm not. You know the financial systems better than anyone. You've built oversight protocols from scratch. You have institutional knowledge and moral authority. And you're the only person in this building I trust completely." "I'm not qualified to be CFO. I was a mid-level analyst 7 years ago. And now you're the director of financial oversight who exposed a 9-year fraud scheme and rebuilt our entire accountability structure. That's more qualification than most CFOs have." Ryan stood up, walked to the window. The city looked peaceful from 17 floors up, traffic moving, construction continuing, life happening in all its messy complexity. "I can't," he said finally. "Why not?" "Because Emma's 8 years old and needs a father who's present, not a CFO working 80-hour weeks. Because I just got my life to a place where it feels manageable. Because—" He turned back to face her. "Because I don't want it." Olivia absorbed that quietly. "Okay. Okay. I'm not going to pressure you into a job you don't want. I just needed you to know the offer exists. If you change your mind, it's yours." "I won't change my mind." "Then I respect that." She stood, gathered her things. "But Ryan, whatever you decide to do next, make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you should want or what makes the most sense or what Emma needs. What you want. Those things aren't separate. They're not. But they're not the same either." After she left, Ryan sat alone in the conference room, staring at nothing. CFO. 7 years ago, he would have killed for that opportunity. Would have seen it as vindication, proof that he'd been right all along, the ultimate reversal of everything Wallace had taken from him. Now it just felt like a different cage. Shinier, better paying, but still a cage. The problem was, he didn't know what he actually wanted if it wasn't this. That night, he brought it up with Emma over spaghetti. "Someone at work offered me a big promotion. Really big. But it would mean working a lot more hours." Emma twirled pasta around her fork with intense concentration. "Do you want it?" "That's the question." "What's the job?" "CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Basically, I'd be in charge of all the company's money." "That sounds important." "It is." Emma took a bite,
chewed thoughtfully. Would you be happy doing it? I don't know, maybe. It's complicated. Dr. Mitchell says when decisions are complicated, you should check your gut. What does your gut say? Ryan smiled despite himself.
My gut says I like being able to pick you up from school and help with homework and not miss bedtime. Then don't take it. It's not that simple, Bug. This is the kind of opportunity people wait their whole careers for. So, you're people. If you don't want it, don't take it. She pointed her fork at him with 7 going on 35 wisdom. You told me doing the right thing matters more than doing the impressive thing. Same rule applies to you. Ryan stared at his daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so smart. You're right. I know. I'm always right. You should write that down. The next day, Ryan told Olivia his answer hadn't changed. She accepted it gracefully, without pressure or disappointment, and the conversation moved on to other things. But the question lingered in Ryan's head for weeks after. What did he actually want? The oversight protocols were working. The company was stable. Wallace's trial was scheduled for October, but the outcome was increasingly inevitable. James was confident they'd get a conviction, possibly a significant prison sentence. Ryan's role was transitioning from crisis manager to maintenance technician, keeping systems running that were already functioning well. It was satisfying. It was important. It was also starting to feel like not enough. July brought Emma's 8th birthday and a party that involved entirely too many kids screaming in a bounce house Ryan had rented despite the cost. David flew out again, bringing a gift that turned out to be a beginner's microscope and a book about marine biology. Really leaning into the science uncle role, Ryan observed. Someone has to counter your finance bro influence. I'm the least finance bro person you know. Fair. You're more like finance janitor turned reluctant executive. That's not better. They watched Emma and her friends destroy 3 pizzas and a birthday cake while negotiating complex social dynamics that made corporate board meetings look simple. She's doing good, David said. Better than when I was here in March. Therapy's helping, and time. Things at school have calmed down. What about you? You doing good? Ryan shrugged. Define good. Not actively miserable, sleeping decent. Got something in your life besides work and parenting? Then no, not particularly. David gave him a look. Ryan, I'm fine, seriously. Just trying to figure out what comes next. That's allowed, you know, figuring things out. You don't have to have all the answers immediately. I'm 32. Feels like I should have some answers by now. I'm 34 and still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Welcome to adulthood. It's mostly confusion with occasional moments of clarity. Emma ran over, covered in frosting and joy. Uncle David, come see what Zoe brought me. David let himself be dragged away, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts and half a piece of birthday cake. Confusion with occasional moments of clarity. That sounded about right. August brought Wallace's plea deal. Rather than face trial and certain conviction, he agreed to plead guilty to 8 counts, forfeit his offshore assets, and accept a 12-year prison sentence. James called Ryan with the news. He'll serve probably 8 with good behavior, plus permanent ban from serving as an officer of any public company. It's not everything we wanted, but it's substantial. What about restitution? He's ordered to pay back $28 million. The rest is gone, spent or hidden too well to recover. But it's something. Ryan sat with that number. $28 million. Recovered. Real money that would go back to the company, back to fixing what Wallace had broken. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like relief that it was finally over. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for late September. Olivia asked if Ryan wanted to attend. You don't have to, she said, but if you want to be there when he's sentenced, I'll make sure you have a seat. Ryan thought about it. 7 years ago, he would have wanted to see Wallace punished, would have needed that closure. Now he just wanted to be done. No, he said. I don't need to see it. Just tell me when it's official. Olivia nodded. Okay, but Ryan, you did this. You brought him down. That matters. I know, but it doesn't change the last 7 years. No, but maybe it changes the next 7. September arrived with Emma starting 3rd grade and Ryan feeling increasingly restless at work. The oversight systems were running smoothly. Elena had hired a team of auditors who knew what they were doing. The board was happy. The SEC had closed its investigation, and Hartwell's stock price was recovering. Ryan's job had become routine. It was exactly what he'd wanted 6 months ago. Stability, predictability, manageable stress. So why did it feel wrong? He was sitting at his desk, staring at a quarterly audit report he'd already reviewed twice, when Patricia knocked on his door. "Mr. Cole? Miss Grant wants to see you." Ryan followed her to Olivia's office, where he found not just Olivia, but also Thomas Brennan and another board member he recognized, but whose name he couldn't remember. "Ryan, sit," Brennan said. "We have a proposal." Ryan sat, suddenly wary. Olivia leaned forward. "We've been discussing the long-term structure of the oversight division you built. It's working well, but it needs permanent leadership, someone who understands the mission and has the credibility to maintain it. Elena's doing great. Elena is excellent, but she's an auditor, not a strategist, and this position needs both." Brennan pulled out a folder. "We want to create a new C-suite position. Chief Integrity Officer, reporting directly to the board, independent of the CEO, with authority to investigate anything and veto financial decisions that raise red flags." Ryan's stomach dropped. "You want me to be the permanent watchdog? We want you to institutionalize what you built. Make sure it survives changes in leadership, market pressure, all of it." Olivia slid the folder across. "It's a 5-year contract, significant salary increase, full benefits, and the hours are structured, no more than 50 hours a week, guaranteed time off, flexibility for family needs." Ryan opened the folder, saw numbers that would change Emma's life. Private school if she wanted it. College fund fully funded. No more worrying about rent or car repairs or whether he could afford the good health insurance. "This feels like you're trying to lock me in," he said. "We are," Brennan admitted, "because what you've built is valuable, and we don't want to lose it when you get bored or burned out or recruited away by someone who sees your talent. I don't want to spend the next 5 years being the person who says no to things." "Then don't," Olivia said. "Be the person who says yes to the right things and build systems that make it easier for everyone to do their jobs well. Be the person who teaches the next generation how to spot problems before they become fraud. Be whatever version of this role makes sense to you." Ryan looked at the contract again. The money was real. The flexibility was real. The opportunity to actually shape something instead of just maintaining it was real. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Take a week," Brennan said. "But Ryan, we're not offering this because we feel guilty about what happened to you or because we want to keep you quiet. We're offering it because you're good at this and we trust you. That's rare." Ryan took the folder home and spent the evening reading through every clause while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. "Big work thing?" she asked without looking up from her math. "Yeah, they want me to stay for 5 more years. Doing basically what I'm doing now, but making it official." "Do you want to?" "I don't know. It's a lot of money. Would mean we could move to a better apartment. Maybe get you that laptop you wanted." Emma put down her pencil. "Dad, I don't need a better apartment. I like this one. And I can wait on the laptop. What do you want?" There was that question again. Ryan set down the contract. "I want to do work that matters. I want to be there for you. I want to not spend the rest of my life defined by what Wallace did or what I did to stop him." "So will this job do those things?" "I don't know. Maybe. The hours are better than being CFO would have been, and the work does matter, but I'm not sure if it's what I want or just what makes sense." Emma stood up, walked over, and climbed into his lap like she was 5 instead of 8. "You know what I want?" she said. "What, bug?" "I want you to be happy. Like actually happy, not just okay happy. The kind where you smile without thinking about it." Ryan held her close, feeling the weight of every decision he'd made to get here. "I'll work on it," he promised. "Good, because you deserve it." That weekend, Ryan did something he hadn't done in years. He went for a long walk. No destination, no agenda, just walking through the city with his thoughts. He passed the Hartwell building, kept going, walked through the financial district where he'd once worked, through the park where he used to eat lunch during his analyst days, past the apartment he'd lived in before Emma was born, before everything changed. The city looked different now. Or maybe he looked different, older, more worn down, but also steadier somehow. He thought about Olivia's offer, about David's advice, about Emma's wisdom that exceeded her years, and he realized the question wasn't whether to take the job. The question was whether he was ready to stop defining himself by what had happened to him and start defining himself by what he chose next. Wallace had taken 7 years. The investigation had taken another 6 months. At some point, Ryan needed to stop letting that define him. Monday morning, he walked into Olivia's office and set the signed contract on her desk. 5 years, he said, but with a clause that lets me renegotiate if the role isn't working or if Emma needs me to step back. Olivia smiled. Already in there. James insisted on it. Then we have a deal. They shook hands, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest. Not excitement exactly, but certainty. This was the choice. His choice. Not revenge, not vindication, not proving anything to anyone. Just choosing to build something good with whatever time he had left. Wallace was sentenced on September 28 to 12 years in federal prison. Ryan was at Emma's school watching her soccer game when he got the text from James. It's done. He's going away. Emma scored a goal, her first of the season, and Ryan cheered loud enough that other parents looked at him funny. When the game ended, Emma ran over, sweaty and grinning. Did you see? Saw the whole thing. You crushed it. Coach says I'm getting better at positioning. Coach is right. They got ice cream after, because apparently scoring goals required celebration, and Emma talked about her team and school and her friend Zoe's new hamster. Normal kid things. Beautiful, boring, normal kid things. Ryan's phone buzzed again. Olivia this time. Wallace is sentenced. Thought you should know. You okay? Ryan looked at Emma, chocolate ice cream on her nose, talking about how hamsters were surprisingly smart. Ryan. Yeah, I'm good. Olivia. Good answer. October brought cooler weather and a rhythm to Ryan's new role that felt sustainable. He hired a team, young analysts hungry to learn, auditors with integrity, people who believed the work mattered. He taught them what to look for, how to ask uncomfortable questions, how to protect themselves while protecting the company. Elena became his second in command, translating his instincts into systematic processes. James helped draft policies that had actual teeth. Sarah built dashboards that made fraud visible in real time. And slowly, piece by piece, they built something that might actually last. Olivia stopped by his office one afternoon in late October with 2 coffees. Thought you could use this, she said, handing him one. Thanks. What's the occasion? No occasion, just wanted to check in. You've been quiet lately. Ryan shrugged. Just working? Building the thing we said we'd build. And it's working. Team's solid. Systems are running. We're catching problems before they become scandals. Boring, effective compliance work. Olivia sat down across from him. You sound less than thrilled. I'm thrilled. This is exactly what I wanted. But, Ryan set down his coffee. But it's weird, you know? I spent 7 years angry about what happened, then 6 months fighting to fix it. Now it's fixed, and I'm just here, doing the job, living the life. And it's good, but it's also kind of anticlimactic. You wanted fireworks? No, maybe. I don't know. He laughed without humor. David says I need to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just accept that things can be okay now. David's smart. He really is. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Can I tell you something? Olivia asked. Always. I used to think success meant never making mistakes, being perfect, having all the answers, never showing weakness. She stared at her coffee cup. Then I made the biggest mistake of my career with you, and it taught me that perfection is impossible. The best you can do is own your mistakes and try to fix them. You did fix it. We fixed it, together, and I'm grateful for that. She looked up at him. But Ryan, you're allowed to move on now. You're allowed to let this be part of your story instead of the whole story. How do I do that? By living, by being present for Emma, by finding things that make you happy that have nothing to do with Hartwell or Wallace or any of this. She smiled. By being boring and content and okay with that. Ryan thought about it. Boring sounds pretty good, actually. Then be boring. You've earned it. November brought Thanksgiving and David flying out again, this time with a girlfriend named Michelle, who taught English at his school and had the kind of laugh that filled rooms. They cooked an ambitious meal that turned out only half burnt, and Emma loved having a full table for the first time in her memory. What are you thankful for, Bug? Ryan asked during dinner. Emma thought about it seriously. That you're happy now, and that Uncle David's girlfriend is funny, and that we have mashed potatoes. Those are good things. What about you? Ryan looked around the table. Emma, healthy and whole. David, solid and present. Michelle, kind enough to embrace this chaotic little family. The apartment that wasn't much but was theirs. I'm thankful we made it through, he said simply. David raised his glass. To making it through. They clinked glasses, Emma with apple juice, the adults with cheap wine, and Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness exactly. Not yet, but the foundation for it. December came faster than expected. The holidays at Hartwell were subdued but genuine. No elaborate parties. Just a casual gathering in the 15th floor break room with pizza and drinks and people who'd survived a year that could have broken the company. Ryan found himself talking to Patricia about her grandkids, to Elena about her husband's new restaurant, to Sarah about her engagement. Normal conversations, the kind that happened when crisis wasn't the default anymore. Olivia pulled him aside near the end. Merry Christmas, Ryan. You too. Got plans? Emma and I are flying to Oregon, spending it with David and Michelle. You? Board retreat in Aspen. Thrilling stuff. She smiled. But actually thrilling. We're profitable again. Clean audit. No scandals. That's the best gift I could ask for. You've done good work here. We've done good work here. She handed him an envelope. Bonus. Board approved it unanimously. You earned it. Ryan opened it, saw a number that made his breath catch. Olivia, this is fair. It's fair. You saved this company. That's worth something. Ryan pocketed the envelope, already mentally allocating it. Emma's college fund, emergency savings, maybe finally fixing the car's transmission. Thank you, he said. Thank you. For everything. For coming back, for speaking up, for staying when you could have walked away. Where else would I go? Anywhere. That's the point. You chose here. They stood in the break room, watching their colleagues laugh and talk, and exist in a space that felt genuinely healthy for the first time in years. Think we actually fixed it? Ryan asked. I think we fixed enough. The rest is maintenance and vigilance, which is less exciting but more sustainable. I'll take sustainable. Me too. Christmas in Oregon was everything Ryan needed. David and Michelle's house was small but warm, filled with books and music, and the kind of comfortable chaos that came from people who genuinely enjoyed each other. Emma bonded immediately with Michelle over a shared love of marine biology and bad puns. Ryan helped David cook while they caught up on everything that didn't fit into phone calls. You seem better, David observed, chopping vegetables with more enthusiasm than skill. I am better. Things are stable. Boring and content? Working on it, David grinned. Good. You deserve boring and content. Christmas morning, Emma opened presents with the kind of joy that made every sacrifice worth it. The microscope from David, books from Michelle, a laptop from Ryan that made her scream and hug him so hard he almost fell over. This is too much, she said, already setting it up. It's exactly right. You've been patient and brave and everything I could ask for this year. You earned it. Emma looked up at him, serious for a moment. Are you happy now, Dad? Like, really? Ryan thought about it. About the job that felt meaningful but manageable. About the apartment that was small but theirs. About the people in his life who mattered. About the weight he'd been carrying for 7 years that finally felt lighter. Yeah, Bug, he said. I really am. Good. Because you deserve it. He pulled her close, memorizing the moment. 8 years old and wiser than anyone he knew. The new year came quietly. Ryan and Emma watched fireworks from David's backyard, counting down with sparkling cider and noisemakers Emma had insisted were mandatory. When midnight hit, Emma threw her arms around Ryan. New year, new stuff, she declared. What kind of new stuff? I don't know, but it'll be good. I can tell. Ryan hoped she was right. They flew back to the city on January 2nd, and Ryan returned to work on the 3rd to find his office exactly as he'd left it. Organized chaos, pending audits, the steady work of keeping things clean. Olivia stopped by mid-morning. Welcome back. Good holiday? Really good. You? Productive. Board's happy. Investors are calmer. We're positioned well for the year, she paused. Ryan, I've been thinking about something. Okay. What Wallace did, what you exposed, it's not just a Hartwell story. Other companies deal with this constantly. What if we could help them? How? A consulting arm, teaching other companies how to build oversight systems like ours. You'd lead it, obviously. Share what we learned, help others avoid what we went through. Ryan considered it. That's ambitious. It's also useful, and it would give you variety, travel, opportunities to teach and build instead of just maintaining.
I'd need to hire people. So hire people, build a team, make it work however makes sense to you. Ryan felt something stir in his chest. Not excitement exactly, but interest. The possibility of taking what they'd built and actually helping others with it. Let me think about it, he said. Take your time. Just know the opportunity's there. That night, Ryan told Emma about it over dinner. Would you travel a lot? She asked. Maybe, some.
But nothing that would make me miss important stuff. Like what? Like school concerts and soccer games and bedtime stories. Emma nodded seriously. Those are important. They're the most important. Then you should do it. If it makes you happy and you don't miss the important stuff. Ryan smiled. When did you get so wise? I told you, I was born this way. You're just catching up. February brought the first consulting contract, a mid-sized tech company in Seattle that had read about Hartwell's transformation and wanted help building similar systems. Ryan flew up for 3 days, bringing Elena and Sarah with him. They assessed the company's processes, identified vulnerabilities, and drafted a comprehensive oversight plan. It was satisfying in a way the day-to-day work at Hartwell wasn't. Helping someone else avoid catastrophe, teaching them what he'd learned the hard way, building something new. He came home energized. Emma noticed immediately. You look different. Different how? Less tired. More like you're thinking about good stuff instead of just doing stuff. You're very observant. I know, Dr. Mitchell says it's a gift. March brought 2 more contracts and a decision to officially launch the consulting division. Ryan hired 3 people, former auditors who'd been burned by corporate fraud and wanted to prevent it instead of just documenting it. They worked well together, moved fast, genuinely believed in the mission. For the first time in 7 years, Ryan felt like he was building something that was entirely his. Not recovering from what Wallace had done, not fixing someone else's mess, but creating something new. It felt right. April brought Emma's 9th birthday and a realization that nearly a year and a half had passed since Ryan had exposed Wallace. A year and a half of therapy for Emma, of legal battles and media coverage and rebuilding. A year and a half of choosing to stay, choosing to build, choosing to believe things could get better. And they had. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Ryan stood in the kitchen one morning making Emma's lunch and realized he wasn't thinking about Wallace, wasn't carrying anger or resentment or the weight of what had been taken. He was just making his daughter's lunch and thinking about the consulting presentation he had next week. Normal, boring, content. Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack already on. Ready, Dad? Almost. Carrot sticks or apple slices? Both. I'm a growing person. Ryan packed both, zipped up her lunch bag, handed it over. They drove to school in comfortable silence, Emma humming some song he didn't recognize, Ryan mentally preparing for the day ahead. At the drop-off line, Emma unbuckled and turned to him. Dad? Yeah, Bug? I'm proud of you, for everything. I know it was hard, but you did good. Ryan's throat tightened. Thank you, Emma. That means everything. I know, that's why I said it. She grinned, opened the door. Love you. Don't forget we have therapy at 4. Love you too. I won't forget. He watched her run inside, backpack bouncing, completely herself. And Ryan realized Emma was right about everything. He had done good. It had been hard. And now, finally, it was okay to just live in the aftermath instead of constantly fighting it. The consulting division grew steadily through spring and into summer. 5 clients, then 8, then 12. Companies that wanted to learn from Hartwell's mistakes, that saw value in prevention instead of just reaction. Ryan traveled more but kept his promise. Never missed Emma's important stuff. Always home for bedtime when he was in town, present even when he was tired. Olivia promoted Elena to Chief Integrity Officer, freeing Ryan up to focus entirely on consulting. It was the right move. Elena loved the oversight work, thrived in the role. Ryan loved the variety, the teaching, the building. Different strengths, different roles, both necessary. By August, Ryan had hired 8 people and was turning down contracts because they couldn't keep up with demand. "You should franchise this," David said during one of their weekly calls. "Like, actually turn it into a separate company. That feels too ambitious." Says the guy who brought down a corrupt CFO and rebuilt an entire company's integrity structure. "Yeah, way too ambitious." Ryan laughed. "Fair point. Just saying, you've built something valuable. Don't be afraid to actually own it." The idea stuck with him. In September, Ryan pitched it to Olivia and the board, spinning off the consulting division as its own entity, with Hartwell as the primary investor and Ryan as CEO. Thomas Brennan loved it. "You'd maintain the oversight role here part-time while building the consulting firm?" "That's the idea. Elena runs day-to-day integrity operations at Hartwell. I consult on major decisions and build the external business." "I like it. Board vote?" The motion passed unanimously. By October, the paperwork was done. Coal Integrity Solutions was officially registered, funded, and operating. Ryan had his own company. It was terrifying and exhilarating and exactly right. Emma was predictably wise about it. "So you're like a boss now?" "I guess so." "Cool. Do you get a cool office?" "We're still working out of the Hartwell building for now, so same office." "That's less cool, but still good." She paused. "Are you happy, Dad?" Ryan thought about the question, about the work that mattered, the flexibility to be present, the team he was building, the clients who actually valued what he offered. "Yeah, Bug, I really am." "Good. You've been happy quiet for a while now. It's nice." "Happy quiet?" "Like, you're not worried quiet or thinking quiet. You're just here, content." Ryan pulled her close. "When'd you get so good at reading people?" "I learned from watching you. You're terrible at hiding your feelings." Noted. November brought Thanksgiving again, this time at Ryan's apartment with David, Michelle, and a few of Ryan's colleagues who didn't have family nearby. The table was crowded, the food was chaotic, and Emma loved every second of playing hostess. During dinner, someone asked Ryan what he was most grateful for. He looked around the table. Emma, laughing at something David said. His team, genuinely enjoying each other. The life he'd built from nothing but determination and refusing to stay down. "I'm grateful we made it here," he said simply. "All of us. Whatever path we took, we made it." They raised their glasses, and Ryan felt the truth of it. They had made it. December came with its usual chaos. Holiday parties, year-end reviews, Emma's school concert where she played Jingle Bells on the recorder with only moderate screeching. On December 15th, Ryan got a call from James. "Wallace is appealing his sentence, claiming his trial counsel was inadequate." Ryan felt a flicker of the old anger, then let it go. Will it work? Probably not, but it'll drag things out another year or two. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What else is there to say? He's in prison, his assets are gone, the company's clean. Whether he appeals or not doesn't change any of that. James was quiet for a moment. "You sound different." "I feel different, lighter." "Good, you earned it." After they hung up, Ryan sat at his desk and realized James was right. He did feel lighter. Wallace's appeal didn't touch him. The past didn't define him anymore. He was just Ryan Cole, father, consultant, builder of systems that prevented harm. That was enough. Christmas was quiet and perfect. Ryan and Emma stayed in the city this year, hosting David and Michelle instead of traveling. They decorated the apartment, baked cookies that turned out lopsided, watched terrible holiday movies while wearing matching pajamas Emma had insisted they needed. On Christmas morning, Emma opened her gifts with pure joy, then handed Ryan an envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a drawing, stick figures of Ryan and Emma holding hands with the words "Best Dad" written in Emma's careful handwriting. Below it, she'd written, "Thank you for being brave and kind and teaching me that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard. I love you forever." Ryan's eyes burned. "Bug, this is perfect. I know. Dr. Mitchell helped me with the words, but I meant all of them. He pulled her close, holding on maybe a little too tight. I love you too, more than anything. I know, you show me every day. Later, after Emma was asleep and David and Michelle had gone to their hotel, Ryan sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and looked at Emma's drawing. Somewhere in a federal prison, Wallace was sitting in a cell, probably bitter, probably planning his next legal maneuver. Somewhere in the city, people were making the same mistakes Wallace had made, thinking they wouldn't get caught. But here, in this small apartment with lopsided cookies and a 9-year-old who understood what mattered, Ryan had everything he needed. He'd lost 7 years to someone else's crime, but he'd built something better in the aftermath, a life that was his, a daughter who knew she was loved, work that mattered, peace that felt earned. The new year came with quiet celebration. Ryan and Emma watched fireworks from their apartment window, counting down together. New year, new adventures, Emma declared. What kind of adventures? I don't know yet, but they'll be good. They're always good with you. Ryan kissed the top of her head, made a silent promise to himself and to her. To keep building, to stay present, to be the father she deserved and the person he'd fought to become. To live in the life he'd earned instead of the one that had been taken. January brought new consulting contracts, new challenges, the steady work of building something that would last. One morning in late January, Ryan was walking through the Hartwell building when he passed Marcus, still working maintenance, still wearing his headphones. Hey, brother, Marcus said, pulling out an earbud. Heard you got your own company now. Yeah, still doing oversight work here part-time, though. Look at you, janitor to CEO. That's a hell of a journey. Ryan smiled. It really is. You happy? Yeah, Marcus, I really am. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Good. You earned it. Both times. Ryan rode the elevator up to his office, thinking about that. Both times. The first time, he'd lost it to someone else's choices. This time, he'd built it himself. That made all the difference. That afternoon, Olivia stopped by his office with coffee, a tradition they'd somehow developed. How's the consulting business? Good. Great, actually. We're at capacity and turning down work. Might need to hire again soon. That's fantastic. She sat down. Ryan, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come back? If you just stayed away after you were fired? Ryan considered it. Sometimes. But I don't think I could have. Eventually, I would have seen the news about Hartwell collapsing and known I could have prevented it. That would have been worse than whatever happened by coming back. Even knowing what Emma went through, the bullying, the therapy, all of it, even then, because she learned something important, that standing up matters even when it costs you. I'd rather her learn that young than never learn it at all. Olivia nodded slowly. You're a better person than I am. I'm just a person who made choices and lived with them, same as you. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd been through something impossible together and come out the other side. You know what's funny? Olivia said eventually. What? 7 years ago, I thought firing you was the right decision, protecting the company, trusting my CFO, doing what made sense. Now I know it was the worst decision I've made in my entire career. But you fixed it. We fixed it, and I'm grateful for that. She stood to leave, then turned back. Ryan, thank you for not giving up on this place, for being better than I deserved. You deserve better too. We both did. Maybe? But we got here anyway. That counts for something. After she left, Ryan sat at his desk and looked at the photo he kept there. Emma, laughing at something just outside the frame, pure joy on her face. That counted for everything. Weeks turned into months. The consulting business grew. Emma thrived. Life settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and good. In March, Ryan was invited to speak at a conference about corporate fraud prevention. He almost said no. Public speaking wasn't his thing, and the idea of being on a stage talking about Wallace felt like reopening old wounds. But Emma convinced him. You should do it, Dad. Other people need to hear your story so they know it's possible to survive bad stuff and still be okay. So he went. Standing on that stage, looking at an audience of CFOs and compliance officers and people trying to prevent what had happened to Hartwell, Ryan told his story. Not the sanitized version, Not the hero narrative, the real story. About being fired unjustly, about the years of invisibility, about choosing to expose fraud even knowing it would cost him peace, about building something better in the aftermath. When he finished, the applause was genuine and sustained. Afterward, a dozen people approached him with their own stories of whistleblowing and retaliation and choosing to do the right thing anyway. Ryan listened to each one, offered what advice he could, and realized something. His story wasn't unique, but maybe sharing it helped make the next person's journey a little easier. That had to count for something. Flying home that night, Ryan thought about the last 2 years. From janitor to whistleblower to CEO of his own company. From invisible to vindicated to simply present. From surviving to building to actually living. It had been messy and painful and harder than anything he'd expected, but he'd made it through. They'd made it through. And on the other side was something he'd stopped believing was possible. A life that was genuinely his own. Back home, Emma was waiting up even though it was past her bedtime. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Good. Really good." "Did you tell them the truth?" "All of it." "Good. Truth matters." She yawned. "I'm proud of you, Dad." "I'm proud of you too, Bug." "I know. You tell me all the time." She hugged him goodnight. "Love you. Love you more." "Not possible." She headed to bed, and Ryan stood in the hallway of their small apartment, listening to her settle in for the night. 7 years ago, he'd lost everything. But he'd built something better, not perfect, not without scars, but real and earned and entirely his. In the kitchen, he made himself tea and sat at the table where he'd made so many impossible decisions. The anger was gone. The need for vindication was gone. The weight of carrying what Wallace had done was finally, blessedly gone. What remained was simpler. Emma, healthy and whole. Work that mattered and fit his life instead of consuming it. Peace that came from knowing he'd done the right thing, even when it cost him, and the quiet satisfaction of being present in his own life. Ryan sipped his tea and thought about tomorrow, about the client meeting he had scheduled, about Emma's soccer game that evening, about the ordinary, beautiful rhythm of days that belonged to him. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy. Inside, everything was quiet and calm. Ryan smiled to himself. Yeah. He was happy, really, genuinely happy, and that was worth everything it had taken to get here.